And I'm very sincerely sorry, folks. I've just noticed that we've been having some microphone issues. The microphone not coming through at all for the last 5 minutes, albeit had a glitch on the screen. So we just got that fixed. We are just going to dial things a little bit back, and I'm sincerely apologetic for that. So, without further ado, if I take you from the top then, and well, we're here at Snetterton today for the penultimate pre-season test event with regards to the GT3 Championship Season 2 as hosted by NXTGEN Racing. Now, the circuit based in Norfolk in the United Kingdom, made up of 12 corners, indeed a very tight and twisty layout, and one that will be catching a good number of drivers out time and time again with regards to their overall positioning, and not only that, also the balance of the car as they make their way through the corners. But as we can see on our schedule tonight, we do have a quite hectic schedule as per last time out at Imola, whereby we have qualifying at the hour at 8 o'clock. That's the first qualifying session and the only qualifying session for tonight. It'll be 15 minutes in length, and over that time our drivers will be, of course, competing to get on pole. After that, we'll have our opening race. That will be the 15-minute sprint race, which will be all about go, 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 hit the beans, full accelerator from start to finish. We'll then have a small break, and then at 9 o'clock British Summer Time, we'll be back for the feature race, 60 minutes in length, and that'll be the one with the strategic element, where we'll be expecting pit stops from our drivers, at least one pit stop to take on fuel. Whether they choose to take on tyres or not, that's an entirely different question. And after that, of course, it will be the case of making it to the end and being the race winner. But of course, with that feature race, the results of the sprint race will determine who starts on pole. It'll be a reverse grid. So our fastest drivers will of course be coming through from the back and trying to clear their way through the field. In terms of your commentary team, now that we've finally got our microphone fixed, my name's Paul Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, or TX141, depending on what media you follow me on, and this broadcast is being brought to you over 3 different broadcasting channels. It's being brought on the NXTGEN Racing YouTube page, it's being also brought on the NXTGEN Racing Facebook page, and last but not least, my own personal Twitch channel. So that's TX141 on Twitch, or it's NXTGEN Racing on both Facebook and YouTube. Now, in terms of this series, of course, what of the circuit being at Snetterton 300, a British circuit, and we've got a good number of British drivers who we'll introduce shortly. But before we can introduce them, we need to introduce our sponsors. Now, you saw a little bit earlier on the advertising video from Apex Racing Academy, and we're just going to very briefly give a series, and we've also got to give a shout out to some of our other sponsors, including the likes of Next Level Racing, now one of our key sponsors, and we've also got out there some other sponsors who are supporting us as well, and those are the likes of Grid Engineering, and we've also got Mark Sykes Photography, to name a couple. But still, coming down to the track side then, and talking a little bit about tonight's event. So why is this event important, and why is it hyped up to be quite a tight and tense event? Well, the thing that must be considered is the fact that this penultimate test race and the test race next week will influence the placement of our drivers going into the official season on July the 14th. So you can imagine right now that whilst this may be a test race and it doesn't mean much in terms of points, it will mean a lot in terms of driver classification. And with regards to that driver classification, in terms of whether they're placed in the pro or the amateur category. Pro, PRO of course, and amateur being abbreviated to AM. And that will be what's up for grabs today, and indeed what's up for stakes in terms of being placed well enough to get into that top category. A lot of drivers would love to be in that pro category, of course. And I think really when we talk about introducing our drivers here, there's none other than one driver who has been a very strong driver throughout the entirety of the test races so far, and that is the British driver of Colin Martin, the Brit, making his way here down towards turn number 8 as he flows down into the left-hander and then the right-hander that follows. And we can see running in the BMW M4 once again, with all of our cars being GT3 cars and the BMW being a popular one, as Martin gets it a little bit wrong there, clipping the entry curb too high, and as a result making his way off the circuit and resetting to the pit lane. But we expect great things from Martin, as we have seen time and time again. And we've also got the fellow English driver here, or British driver actually, of Billy Fletcher, making his way around right now in the Porsche 911 GT3, coming up towards turn number 8 as well, and just getting himself acquainted. With only 2.5 minutes of practice to go, qualifying will be underway very shortly indeed, and Fletcher here taking the time just to get himself hooked in. Now the BMW M4 is going to be a little bit of an interesting one, front engine rear wheel drive. It will be a bit stronger on the straights potentially, but perhaps its cornering will be good, but not by comparison with the Porsche one suspects, given the Porsche has got that natural weight distribution towards the rear of the car, mid-engine rear wheel drive, and that's going to give him a little bit of a rotational advantage through the corners. That can also make the car snake a bit, particularly when tyre wear comes into effect. We've also got Alex Everett, who is returning again in the Ferrari 488, and he's parked up in the pits right now, and indeed we are hoping for some fantastic things here from Everett as he gets underway tonight. And we've also got the Ferrari of George Bland making its way around the circuit right now, coming up into the left-hander there as he goes through Sector 2 right now. That's going through turn number 4 and heading up towards Hamilton Corner here, turn number 5, and looking at a very nicely placed Bland as he continues his way around the circuit. We've got Matt Emmons here running around in the Audi R8. Now this is going to be a bit of a different pick. We haven't seen too much Audi action over the course of the test races previously, but we know Emmons, a very strong driver, and indeed are looking to make the most of the car. And speaking to him briefly before he hopped into the car, he was saying to me that he's expecting to do well tonight and looking forward to playing around with the Audi and understanding its quirks and its ins and outs. We've also got Siegert, Jochen Siegert here, the German driver, of course, who we've known time and time again running around in the Porsche 911 as well, the Jägermeister mobile there, looking at very fetching in the orange livery, and we look forward to seeing what he's able to do. And further down we've got Matthew Addy making his way around right now in a rather nice contrasting livery there, albeit getting a bit wrong coming out of the corner there and actually going backwards to the circuit, but controlling it very well, Matthew Addy. I tell you, 10 out of 10 for controlling the car. Now that was some very smooth car control, no doubt about that, the number 57 driver, and in that rather fetching black and yellow liveried Ferrari. And hopefully with a little bit more time out on the circuit and keeping it on track as he makes his way back onto the course at Montreal Corner at turn 2, we can see some fantastic driving from him. We've also got Darren Doherty parked in the pits, the Irishman parked in there right now in the Ferrari. We've got Tom Delaney making his way around on the circuit in the Porsche 911. And last but not least, right now in terms of our drivers just making their way around the circuit, Mark Sykes once again in the McLaren 720S here as he makes his way up through Hamilton Corner right now. And we look forward to seeing what Mark can achieve. As qualifying is about to get underway, our drivers will have 15 minutes. Who's going to be on pole by the end of it? Let's find out. As we say hello in the chats to Zeronic in the Twitch chat, who's very excited to get underway with the racing today, and also Katie Eames in the Facebook chat, who says she apologises now, but she may make some poor jokes regarding a certain corner at some point, particularly a bomb hole corner, and I can understand why, as we are getting the qualifying session underway right now. And indeed it is going to be one of those instances where everybody will of course want to get out on circuit as quickly as possible, and as they charge through it'll be one of those situations where they'll want the clear air out on track because of how technical Snetterton is. We've got a lot of twisty corners, 12 corners, and really there's not too many places for our drivers to get up to top speed. They do have the run from of course Williams down to Brundle, so that is from turn 7 to turn 8 down the Bentley straight, and we'll see that in a short while. And they've got the run out Murray's Corner at turn 12 down the centre straight to Riches at turn 1. But the thing about those straights, whilst they are relatively long, it just about gives our drivers the ability to get close to top speed and start to deploy that top speed. But really, they don't have too much distance in order to build up a huge amount of speed, and it's about maintaining apex speed here. It's going to be so critical as they get ready, and they're all on their outlaps right now. Although Billy Fletcher deciding to stay in the pits by the looks of things, as we see all of our drivers pushing around right now. As they continue to do so here, we can see a bit of weaving behind there, Martin, and we've also got Siegert there just weaving to get some heat in their tyres, as we've got Everett here making his way through turn 8 and 9, and now coming through what is a bomb hole corner at turn 10. The right hander coming up, and we are going to jump on board with the Ferrari driver to take you around a lap of the rather interesting British circuit. So without further ado, hopping in the cockpit of the driver here as he makes his way through, coming through turn 11 and up into 12 here. So as he comes through Murray's, he's got to nail this and not clip the apex curve too hard, because otherwise it will launch the car off the circuit. And now charging all the way down the centre straight down towards turn 1 and going onto a lap. So building up through the gears here, coming up into 5th gear very shortly. You can see not able to get up into 6th gear as he's coming up into turn 1. Braking just before that 50 board there and letting the car rotate through the corner. A little bit apprehensive about flying too hard into the corner as it is effectively a double apex as he now comes up into Montreal turn 2. The hairpin corner here coming all the way down to 1st gear, just gradually rotating through the corner, getting a little bit of snap oversteer there upon exit as he applied the power. The rear end not stabilising, now coming through Palmer at turn 3 here, and again a flowing apex, but it's one of those extended ones where you think the apex has arrived and then the corner is still going, and now he comes onto sector 2 as he goes across the timeline up into turn 4 here, braking down hard through the gears, coming all the way down to 1st gear here. A slow corner, almost as slow as Montreal as he makes his way out of the corner, now up towards Hamilton. The left-hander just about to come in, and he'll be coming down through the gearbox to 3rd gear still, and as he makes his way out of the corner, now coming up into the right-hander here, Boogies, and coming out through the right-hander, he's now going to be starting to make his way up to Williams here. Williams corner on the right he goes, and as he rotates in here, you can see that the car just drifting a little bit. They've still got to get some temperature in those tyres. The car just naturally wanting to understeer, which isn't common in a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, I should say, but it's one of those facts that at the moment just feeling that understeer because of the fact the car not fully up to temperature. Now coming up into a left into right combination of 8 into 9 here, and very gradually coming down the gears, trying to balance that rear end flying out as he came down to 2nd gear for turn 9, and now going through bomb hole here at turn number 10. You can see how you drop down into the crater, and as he comes back out there, very nicely done. And now he's only got turn 11, which he's flying through right now with a very long right hander here, and then Murray's corner, he's going to snap it back to the left very shortly, going through Murray's, coming down to 2nd gear, rotating off of apex and clearing the corner, and now charging down. This is going to be our 2nd flying lap, given the fact that Billy Fletcher's already set a lap. But as he comes across the line here, what is Everett going to achieve? It is going to be a 1:49.4. He strikes the first lap here. What can everybody else do? Well, Colin Martin sitting at 49.658, so only 2.5 tenths off of our provisional pole sitter, but more lap times coming in as our drivers continue to make their way around. Bland there with the 51.3, so not as strong a lap there as we see Seagert improving immediately on that and picking up a 50.8, and we've got Delaney there with a 51.892. And we'll wait to see what some of our other drivers are able to achieve. Sykes right now, a best part of 5.6 seconds off of our provisional pole sitter. But again, it may have been a warm-up lap rather than anything notable at this point as he continues to make his way around in the McLaren right now, just pushing around the circuit. Just getting a little bit too tight to the exit apex there of turn number 11. As he comes through 12 there, you could see how Sykes just got a little bit distracted by the fact he rotated in too early at the completion of turn 11. And as a result, that cost him a small amount of time. But as he comes across the line here, is it an improvement? It is to a 52.4, so he's now the best part of 6 tenths of his closest rival, and that is Delaney currently holding on to P5 as he makes his way off the circuit there briefly. Sykes having a little bit of a major off there in the rather fetching liveried McLaren as he now returns to the circuit. Now, a lot of our drivers still putting in laps as it currently stands, and we can see here that we do have Seagert making his way up towards what is the turn number 8 to 9 combination here, coming down the Bentley straight. And can he improve? He is 1.2 seconds down now on Colin Martin as it currently stands, his best that being a 50.86, and as he comes through turns 8 and 9, well, at this current point in time, we can see continue to press around the lap here, and on our timing screens hasn't really improved over the course of this lap so far, as we see that Fletcher improves and goes provisional pole with a 48.512, and Colin Martin is on a fast lap as well. Does he jump up? He does. Well, we'll wait and find out. He does not jump up all the way to pole, but he does pick up a 48.995, so everybody's starting to hunt down those 48s, and Fletcher leading by the best part of almost half a second as we see Bland improving to a 49.9. And what about Seagert here? Well, he didn't improve on that lap. He's gone around again here, and he's going to try and improve on this lap. He's going to try and improve off of that 50.86. As he makes his way through a Montreal corner here, turn 2, we take a look to the chat and we say hello to Iron Duck, who unfortunately mixed up the tracks, but will be there for the final test race next week at Bathurst. And we can see that's Ronick there mentioning that Bathurst is the best track. Well, Snetterton does have its upsides as well, so let's not forget about Snetterton and think about the Australian track next week. But as we can see, Seagert here making his way through the left hand of turn 4 and now heading down towards Hamilton here. Looking very composed so far is the German as he makes his way up towards the Hamilton corner, albeit just tapping a little bit of the grass here, perhaps just trying to find the track width and get a real real feel for how much he can exploit the full limits of the circuit. But as he makes his way through the corner, a little bit of over rotation there coming out to turn number 6, up into 7 he goes, up into Williams corner here, and you can see he decided to go for a late apex there to give him the better speed down the straight. It means that his average apex speed is a little bit lower, but it gives him the better launch onto the Bentley straight, and that probably is where he feels he can improve more, is by having that higher top speed down the straight into the braking zone for turns 8 and 9. As he comes down to 8 here, and you can see that he's very composed through 8 and 9. The car just bouncing a little bit upon entry, but nothing major, and this is so far a double improvement. He has improved in both sectors 1 and 2. Can he continue this momentum, the number 148 driver, and improve his way up the order as more times are coming in? And we can see Emmons currently in P6 in the Audi, only 2 tenths off of Seeger. But I suspect the Porsche driver here is going to give himself some breathing room to Emmons right now as he comes out the final corner. Then what's it going to be from the Porsche as he makes his way across the timeline here? It is going to be a 1 minute, and as we look to our time screen update, it is a 1 minute 49.983, so weaker in the final sector compared to his personal best, but still an improvement, and now into those 49s, definitely improving by over half a second there compared to his previous best. But right now, provisional pole still being held by the Porsche driver of Billy Fletcher as he makes his way down towards turn number 4 once again, and as he comes into the corner here, definitely I think Colin Martin just trying to follow him around here and try and get a feel for where the Porsche is faster. I think he might be also tailing him so that way he can see perhaps in the race if he's battling with him where he's strong and where he's weak over the course of a lap, and that's something you can do in qualifying as long as you're not compromising the driver in front or causing them to be in a near collision or something along those lines. Then the stewards are not going to wag any fingers at all, and perhaps Martin just using this as a little bit of a reconnaissance drive right now. As we look back to Emmons here in P6, just improved to a 150.236, but he's still got the best part of 2.5 tenths if he wants to chase down Seegert in P5, as we see some more drivers taken to the circuit right now. And we've also got Nigel Stock just coming out on the circuit, as we see Stock making his way around the British driver here coming out of another corner, coming out of what I believe there was Bombhole and into Coram, into turn 11 that is, and as he makes his way around here in the Ferrari, getting it a little bit too tight on the apex, and it's such a deceptive corner, Coram, because you think you've hit the apex, you think you can keep turning in, but then you're turning too much and the car just goes a little bit too tight. You start to get on the grass. As we say hello to Swede Lurb in the Twitch chat as he comes across the line here. Stock, I suspect, did improve there, and what is going to be the updated lap time? Well, he's still quite a way down the order. In fact, he's on a 2-minute flat at the moment, so it was an improvement, but he's still got a long way to go. And indeed, Stock has a lot of time in his hands, but he hasn't got too long in qualifying. He's only got 5.5 minutes to go as we look around the field, and we can see that Bland right now in P4 with what is on our timing sheets a 49.92, looking to improve as Sykes has returned to the pits in P9 at the moment. But we're going to stay with Bland for a little bit longer. And you can see just not quite getting it right there out of a turn, and oh goodness me, and Bland getting it very wrong and deciding to turn it into a rallycross circuit. Well, one good news about Snetterton is the fact we don't have too many inside walls on the corners. There's a lot of grass space, so if our drivers should make a catastrophic mistake, as we saw there from Bland, it's not as though they're going to be ricocheting into a wall anytime soon, and they can actually get the car under control quite easily. There's a lot of space to run off here, albeit it'll take a long time to rejoin, of course, because of the grass. But all of our drivers right now making their way around on circuit and continue. They've only got the best part of 4.5 minutes to go here, as we can see Addy just making his way onto another flying lap right now, the very fetching yellow-black liveried not McLaren, Ferrari, as he makes his way through turn at number 2 here, and coming out the corner you can see just getting a little bit too wide there, and the car just snap oversteering a tiny bit on exit, and it's caught out a number of our Ferrari drivers Montreal corner on the exit, where the car just does not want to grip as much when they deploy the power, and it decides to weave a little bit instead, and it just disconcerts our drivers. But making his way down towards turn number 4 now, going deep into turn 4 in fact, but using it as a hairpin and going for the deep line there in order to be able to get a better run out the corner up towards Hamilton. And it can prove effective, albeit it will cost him some time in Sector 2 overall, but it can give him a better run into Hamilton, and perhaps he feels he can carry more speed through Hamilton as a result of that, as he goes through Oogies and now up in towards Williams corner here, and we can see Billy Fletcher continuing to improve, finding that he's purple in the final sector in the bottom of your timing screen there, but not able to find a way to improve in Sectors 1 and 2 right now, but still holding on to that provisional pole with only 3.5 minutes remaining in this session, and he's still ahead by the best part of half a second. We're focusing on Fletcher here, making his way down towards turns number 8 and 9, and looking, oh goodness me, and not Fletcher, my apologies, Addy here, as he made his way through 8 and 9 and just jumping himself onto the curb of turn 9 and going way too deep, and he rejoins, and that is going to be an aborted lap as we see that as we look around here. Emmons just a little bit ahead of him right now, coming into the end of a lap. This is not going to be an improvement from Emmons. We can see he's down in sectors 1 and 2, and I think it will be the case that he's going to have to go around again. And perhaps this has been a little bit of a sighting lap and a warm-up lap for him, as I can tell you that we are seeing some improvements out on circuit. Everett right now in provisional P3, 8 tenths down on our leader, almost 9 tenths down on our leader, as Emmons there setting a 50.532, not an improvement, and continuing to try and find some way to improve and try to get down into those 49s. But Everett right now improving in sector 1, he's in sector 2. We focus on the Ferrari driver as he makes his way down the Bentley straight here, building up the speed and coming into the final sector. Can he find a way to get himself on the front row, albeit he has got 4 attempts to close down just to get himself onto the front row and depose Colin Martin as he makes his way through 8 and into 9 here. You can see very composed through the corner, although he's lost the time in sector 2, and it's all going to be about sector 3 for him. Can he find a way to improve? He comes through a bum hole and nails it very nicely. They're now going through Coram here. Again, you can see the very tight line that he's using through turn number 11, and he's actually starting to build a good amount of flow through the corner. As he comes out of Murray's, we can see Fletcher once again setting a purple sector. In fact, Fletcher going the fastest of everyone. Again, we're at 48.1. And what will this be from Everett as he comes across the line here? Is it going to be an improvement? It is an improvement to a 49.045. So almost into those 48s. And only now half a tenth off of our provisional P2 driver as Everett goes onto the grass there. Very, very lucky there to keep it together and point it away from the wall on the inside of the circuit. And Colin Martin right now probably be thinking to himself that he does have a rival in the form of Everett returning to the pits, but Fletcher still out there and looking very strong right now to take pole position for race number 1. Bland, meanwhile, continuing to go around on the circuit. The only driver really improving at this point, as we see there, Bland getting it very wrong, coming through the corner and going wide out of Palmer. Turn number 3, that is, in numerical format. But now coming up to turn number 4 here, and I think he's just going to have to use this as another sight, and that as most of our drivers have returned to the pits here, and we can see Addy coming across the line. Does he improve as we wait for our timing screens to update? It is an improvement to P7 for Addy, picking up a 50.987, and indeed getting himself now up onto that 4th row, and quite securely, I would say, as we take a little bit of a look further back, and we can see that nobody else really improving right now. Fletcher trying to do everything he can to find an even fast lap. We know Bland had the off on his current lap, and Seagate right now in P5 trying to find his way onto that 2nd row with his final qualifying lap. Will he be able to do it? Let's wait and find out as he makes his way through the circuit right now, and he's just there coming through turn number 6 and up into turn number 7, going through the Williams corner here, and then he'll be making his way down onto the Bentley straight once again. Can he find a way to get a faster time here? It's going to be a bit of a 50-50. We'll wait and see what his time looks like come the end of Sector 2. Has he improved, or he's still down in Sectors 1 and 2 down? So this is not looking as though it's going to be a major improvement. Indeed, I don't think Bland is going to improve, but let's just wait and see if Seeger is able to get a little bit more time out of the lap here. He's going to be coming through at bomb hole very shortly as he goes through the crater there. He's going to be flying through it. You can see the rear of the car just stepping out where he just got on the power and attacked the corner a little bit too hard there, and the rear being shaken. In fact, losing a little bit more composure there through at Coram corner, and I think this is going to be an aborted lap. He's just going to do an in lap here and enter the pits, because this lap has been a rough one, although he's going to come across the line in fact and then jump to the pits. He's allowed to complete this lap, but it's definitely not going to be a major improvement as he comes across the line there. It is not an improvement. And what about Evans? Well, he's parked up on circuit, so that is the completion of qualifying, and pole position, ladies and gentlemen, goes to Billy Fletcher from the United Kingdom with an absolutely impressive 48.147, 8.5 tenths clear of anybody else out on circuit. And now we wait to get underway with race number 1. So as we head down to the grid then, what we are going to be seeing very shortly as all of our drivers line up for the rolling start, we have Billy Fletcher on pole from Luxim24 Esports with a 1:48.147, an absolutely phenomenal qualifying lap, 8.5 tenths clear of anybody else. Colin Martin lined up alongside him. Then we've got Alex Everett in P3 from Exiled with an 8.5 tenths gap, almost 9 tenths between himself and Colin Martin in terms of time. And then we've got George Bland lined up alongside him. Siegert in P5, the German doing well in the Porsche there. Matt Emmons lined up alongside him in the Audi. And then we've got Addy and Delaney sharing the fourth row of the grid, Mark Sykes and Doherty on the fifth row, and then last but not least, Nigel Stock starting at the back, having only recently run onto the qualifying session and I think looking to make up places in the race as we wait to get underway with race number 1. Now do keep in mind that this is going to be a sprint race there, only 15 minutes as you can see, so this is really a little bit of a teaser of things to come for our drivers, but it's all important because where they finish in this race will determine where they start in the feature race, the 60-minute race. You win the sprint race, you'll be starting right at the back for the feature race and vice versa. So we are waiting to get underway with the rolling start procedure here, and it will be the case that we are just waiting on one driver to get himself set. And I believe that is Sykes right now, who's just getting ready to arrive on the grid. He's just getting the car finalised. The gridding procedure, however, is complete. I don't think Sykes was actually able to get the car onto the start line there. No, Sykes not able to make it, so as a result we are only going to have 10 cars here. As we can see, all our drivers now making their way around Coram Corner here as part of the rolling start procedure, and they will be a go very shortly. So who's it going to be in the lead come at the end of the first couple of corners? Will it be Fletcher or will it be Martin? We know Martin starts off very strong in these races, but we'll wait and see as they come out the final corner and Fletcher will take us away. And it's lights out and away we go for all of our drivers as we can see Fletcher going for an early start there and Martin as a result being dropped quite early by comparison, and Everett going for the move, but he's going for the defensive move here versus Bland as they go into turn number 1. Bland trying to go around the outside of Everett here, Everett hanging to the inside, and as a result I think he'll have the defensive mover done as they come up into Montreal here. We can see that he's shut the door now on Bland has Everett as Everett looks for the cutback here, and further back we can see that Addy dropping a position there, Addy being passed by Emmons, back up to P6 is Emmons as behind. We've got Stock who's dropped a little bit down the order. He made one gain on lap number 1, but we can see now battling with Delaney as we have an off there. I think that's Bland who's had a major off. What has happened? And Darren Doherty has had a crash as well. So Bland and Doherty both having very difficult starts, and we'll take a look at those very shortly for you folks. But meanwhile, looking further up the grid, we can see that Fletcher starting to pull away a little bit and getting a good gap over Martin as further back Everett going wide there out of Hamilton Corner, and that's going to enable some drivers to come up here, in particular Siegert here, as a lot of drivers had a very difficult start to their racing day. Siegert here up into P4 and now making his way through Williams Corner, chasing after what looks to be Everett there as they make their way out of the Williams Corner and now down onto the Bentley Straight. As they go charging down, we hear that Bland is starting his recovery drive from the back of the field as somebody has got it very wrong at the back there, and who is that? Is that Darren Doherty? Well, as he comes through Williams Corner here, the Irishman making his way around, he just gets it a little bit too much oversteer through the corner, and the car decides to say hello to the wall, and he tries to get it recovered, but it just doesn't want to cooperate. And very fortunate not to see the car completely slam into the wall. He's jumped to the pits, so that car has been retired. Doherty has had to retire from race number 1. So as we come to the end of lap number 1, it is Fletcher leading currently by 1.4 seconds ahead of Colin Martin in P2. Then it's Everett a further 2.3 seconds down, followed by Siegert. Then we've got Matthew Evans, and then not Matthew Evans, Emmons, as we see the Addy behind. Then we've got Delaney, and then we have Bland in P number 8, followed by Nigel Stock in P9, who's just making his way across the timeline right now. And then we've had the 2 retirements, of course, with Sykes not able to take part in the race, not able to get onto the grid, and Doherty having that incident coming out of Williams Corner and the car being in an irreparable state to continue. But Fletcher right now leading and pulling away a little bit as he makes his way out of the corner, as I'm hearing that Stock has had an incident as well. Let's take a look back and what happened to Nigel Stock. So making his way then up towards turn number 8 and 9 on lap number 1 here. We're going to see he goes into 8 and then the right under 9, and the car before it even gets to 9 just bounces a little bit onto the grass, and that is what happened to the British driver there. The car just not wanting to settle, as I believe Sykes has now left the pits and he's actually out on circuit. So he is going to be a lap down. They've been able to get that car going, and this is going to be purely for information. It's good to see Sykes out on circuit, but focusing back on the here and now, we can see that as it currently stands, we have got Emmons in P5 right now. He's managed to gain 1 place at the start of the race. Can he continue to make his way out the field? He's only the best part of half a second of Seegert, and he is closing at a rapid rate. In fact, he is closing quite rapidly as they make their way down the Bentley straight down towards turns 8 and 9 here, and as he comes into left to right combination, you can see how the Audi just is a little bit sensitive to those raised curves, particularly at turn 8, and Emmons having to respect that very dearly as he makes his way through Bomb Hole and now heading up to Coram Corner. And as we take a look to the chat right now, we can see Zoronic there cheering on Sykes, and also noticing that some drivers have not practiced perhaps as much as they should have. Well, we'll leave that to the drivers, of course, as we see that Addy under a little bit of pressure as Doherty has got the car repaired. And in fact, it's got the car back out on circuit from what I gather. We will find out what is going on very shortly. But focusing on the here and now, you can see that Addy all over the back of Emmons as they come down towards turn number 1 here. Emmons is going to have to go defensive, or does he? As it looks so Addy backs out of it. But these drivers really coming to life right now as we jump on board with Addy making his way up towards turn number 2. And riding on board with the driver here, you can see it from his perspective. We've got the little camera in his cockpit. We could note that having a bit of a difficult time following Emmons there through at turn number 2 through Montreal Corner, and as he builds his speed up here for turn number 3, going through Palmer Corner right now, just being very sensitive to the flow of the car as all the drivers there use the runoff space, of course, in order to make the corner before coming up towards turn 4 here. And as they go into that left-hander, you can see how Seegert is really struggling by comparison with the two behind, with Emmons between Addy and Seegert. And it is the case that the Porsche driver here just a little bit slow in sector 2, and that's what's exposing him to Emmons and Addy. As we jump back to the exterior cameras right now, and you can see just how close it is going to get as we hear that Bland has passed Delaney for P7. How did that occur? I think this was going to be quite a simple pass as Delaney went onto the grass and spun off the circuit there, coming through Hamilton Corner. So Delaney just making a mistake and Bland gaining from it as a result, as we see that Seegert right now really in the pressure seat as he's got Emmons and Addy chasing after him still. And the Porsche driver here looking strong going into sector 3 by comparison, but it's one of those situations where I think where he's stronger in the 2 sectors, which matters, but in the technical sector where it's going to be very difficult to overtake, that's where it's a case that Emmons and Addy can get closer, but they just can't get close enough to try and force a move on here. And that's one of the things about Snetterton, sector 2 in particular, because of how tight and twisty it is, you can make overtakes, but you've got to have such pace advantage. As you see there in the rear of your camera shot, Addy getting very close to the back of Emmons there, going through Murray's Corner, and that almost looks as though it was going to be a hit on the rear end by Addy on the back of Emmons, and that shows you just how much pace that Addy wants to unleash right now in that Ferrari, but he just can't find a way to get clear of the Audi. And once he gets clear of the Audi, you have to wonder how long it'll be before he really puts Seegert under a lot of pressure. The German right now being given a nice cushion with the fact he's got Emmons between himself and Addy. Addy wanting to gain 2 places here as we see the Audi driver ahead of Emmons goes a little bit deep there, and Addy having a better run out of Montreal this time and definitely trying to work a way to keep the car consistent through Montreal Corner, so that way he gets the best possible run up towards Palmer. Not that he'll have the run to make the move into Palmer, but you can see that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to run closer and closer to the Audi driver now, and that way he'll give himself the opportunity to make a move potentially down the Bentley straight up towards turns 8 and 9. But we'll wait and see, of course, because there's still plenty of time in this one. We've still got half the race to go. We're only 6.5 minutes in, and we've got just over half the race actually, as we see that Addy making his way around now through Hamilton and heading up towards Oogies. And you can see as he goes into the right hander here, it's a rinse and repeat of before, and all 3 drivers staying within 1 second of one another respectively. As we look a little bit further back, and we can see Stock right now the best part of 13 seconds down on Delaney, and after the incidents early on, I think just trying to do his best in order to get the car around and get a little bit of track knowledge in, and also get a little bit of knowledge of the car. It becomes more of a practice session at this rate, as we see Doherty as well doing the same after getting the car restored in the pits. The Irishman doing everything he can to get some more track knowledge in preparation for the feature race, and Sykes behind will be looking to do that, having missed the grid start. Now looking back up front, Fletcher right now really running away with things. The gap now up to 3.6 seconds, and I can tell you that Fletcher on his previous lap set the fastest lap of a 48.36, and as he comes across the timing line this time around, he's improved to a 48.30. So this man right here is absolutely flying compared to everyone else, and his main rival, Colin Martin, only able to achieve a 49.6 on that lap. But the BMW M4 driver, I think, will be pleased with what he's doing, but he's still got a lot out there. As we're hearing that Seeger is being reeled in once again here by Emmons. Emmons improving there and doing a lap which was 4 tenths of a second faster than Seeger, and I think the Porsche driver just feeling that pressure as he goes a little bit deep into Montreal, but it's not too compromising. That's the one thing that's worth noting about the Porsche versus the Audi in the Ferrari. You can see that when he gets it right, Seeger, and getting on the power, it's so stable with the rear end. It's not tail happy by comparison with the Audi in the Ferrari, and that's what they have to be so sensitive of. But you can see Emmons now getting closer and closer, finding a bit of pace, finding the vibe and the rhythm, but he's got to try and find a way through as they go through Hamilton right now. Also, not Hamilton here, they're coming up to Hamilton right now, I should say, and as they make their way up towards the left-hander here, the turn 5, we know in the rear of your camera shot there, Bland just watching on 3.3 seconds down on this battle for P4 as we ride and look backwards from the gearbox of Seeger here. Now as they make their way down towards Williams here, coming through at the right-hander, and it's going to be the long run down the Bentley straight. You can just note how the different lines being used by the drivers here, where Seeger is trying to use a very planted line, whereas Emmons is having to be more conservative with his lines and let the car naturally rotate through the corners as they charge down towards turns 8 and 9 right now. And this is where we'll see Emmons just very gradually close up once again, and look how much more aggression he can take under braking. Emmons having a lot of confidence on the brakes versus Seeger as they make their way now through bomb hole, going into the crater. Of course, the cars will jump at this point. Oh, goodness me, and Emmons almost getting it a little bit wrong there. The rear end of the car just letting loose, but that is where Emmons is losing the downforce in the dirty air of Seegert's car, and as a result of that, as you can see, gets really close to the back of Seegert's car, but Emmons really pushing right now. But every time he pushes, and this was one of the things he was concerned about with the Audi picking it for this test event, because they don't have to declare their cars until 1 week before the season, as I understand it. It was a concern of Emmons, the fact that he'd be running a car which is so twitchy and sensitive to changes in the air in front of it, and it really needs the perfect conditions. It's a very strong 1-lap pace car when it's running in clear air, but over the course of the race it can be a tricky devil to drive. But Emmons doing his best to conquer the machine as he makes his way out of Montreal once again, and this is the closest battle on circuit, the battle for P4, and these 3 drivers inseparable, as we see Delaney there going on to his fastest lap of the race so far in P8. We're 53.252. Now as we look back up towards our leaders as it currently stands, we can see that Colin Martin in P2 now 5 seconds off our race leader Billy Fletcher, who, if you're wondering where he was, here he is as he makes his way through Williams and onto the Bentley straight, and just doing everything he needs to right now to hold on. As I think we have had a pass here. Oh goodness me, what on earth has happened here? Seeger has had a major accident. Let's take a look. So coming up towards Hamilton here, was there just a mistake from Seeger? Because we saw on our timing screens, yeah, he went a little bit wide there into the Hamilton corner and he was punished. And unfortunately for what was the Emmons there, he just clipped the front end of Seegert's car, and that's going to be damage to both cars, of course. But I think now it's the case of, well, Seeger will definitely have to return that car to the pits or drive on with a damaged front end. And we can see that Emmons there having a really, it was a glancing blow, and he was fortunate enough to get away with no more damage than that. But he does have to wonder how much damage is on the car, as he's now up into P4, and now it's going to be Addy who's in that driving seat in order to try and chase after the Audi driver here as they make their way through Coram Corner and up towards turn number 12. As we take a look back with our stewards, there's nothing from the stewards as it currently stands, and looking at back forward we can see that Addy right now really trying to find a way to catch up to Emmons, and I think he felt he had an opportunity with the incident, but he backed out of it, of course, trying to be safe there with the yellow flags that were temporarily waved as they make their way down. They're inseparable in terms of lap time right now as they go on to another lap here, as they go on to their 7th lap, and we can see that Addy doing everything he can to try and find a way to get within half a second. Really, this gap has been stabilising at about 7 tenths to 8 tenths of a second between the two of them, as we hear that Dan Doherty has had another crash, well, an incident we're hearing on our screen, and we'll take a look back at that very shortly. So here we go. This is Doherty making his way off through a Coram Corner here, and is it a case of the rear end of the car deciding to come loose? It is indeed, because he went on the inside grass and the car said no and decided to return to the grass at Murray's Corner instead. So as a result of that, Doherty just not having the best of races so far, down in that P10 position and just trying to build up as much knowledge as possible, and Sykes now only 40 seconds off of Doherty in the chase for P10. But really, around the circuit, we can see that Addy is gradually being dropped by Emmons right now. The gap has opened up to 1.2 seconds. And looking further down the order, we can see that our original P4 Manasiga trying to find his way to hunt that position back. But he's got a long way to go. And as we can see, the car not looking in the best of states as he makes his way through Williams. It's the front right-hand side from our side. It's his left-hand side from the driver's perspective, which is heavily wounded. And that will cost him the ability to rotate the car through those right-hand corners where the front left-hand tyre will have to do a lot of work. As we're hearing, Dr. T has had another brief off, and all of our drivers right now doing everything they can to press around all the same as we continue to watch on. Now we're looking at Fletcher up front right now as he makes his way through turn 1 once again here, and as he makes his way through the corner, is there anybody who's going to be able to match him? Well, Martin right now, to give you an idea, is 1 second the lap slow, or at least on that previous lap, so I do not think there's going to be a major close down by Martin on Fletcher here. I think Fletcher has got this one with only 2 minutes to go. These guys will of course have approximately 1 to 2 more laps if you include this lap. I think Martin's on his penultimate lap. Fletcher may get 1 more in, but that will be to do or tell, and of course that will be for Fletcher to determine how many laps this race is going to go on for, as we see that he makes his way down towards turn number 4. Does Martin right now. Back in P3, Everett having a quiet race after a little bit of a tumultuous start. He had some pressure from Addy, but he was able to hold off Addy and then made his way up the order and really did a fantastic job, and has just been able to run away with this one since then as he makes his way out of turn number 4 and up towards Hamilton corner here. And Emmons down in P4, having got himself up into this position with Siegert's mistake of course, and now doing everything he can just to bring the wounded Audi home with the contact between himself and Siegert, as Addy looks on, just not able to catch up and dropping to 2.5 seconds back right now. But our top 5 had strong races, and looking forward to the feature race. Bland by comparison, however, had a little bit of a difficult start to the race, made a number of mistakes. He did start well, but then saw himself drop down the order, particularly coming out of Williams' corner down to the Bentley straight, grazing the wall and clipping the car in, and that caused it to spin out across the circuit. And you have to imagine he will be looking to recover from that in the feature race and do better. He feels as though he's probably got the pace in the car, but he needs to be able to deploy it down on the circuit, of course. We saw it in qualifying, but he needs it in the race. Siegert, meanwhile, again, another one of those drivers. He knows he's got a lot of pace, does Siegert the German, but it will be one of those situations where he'll be kicking himself for a small mistake, and he'll have to find a way back in the feature race. And Stock, meanwhile, doing everything he can just to build up a little bit more track knowledge. What have been in P8 right now, having joined the session a little bit later, but doing it well as it currently stands. Delaney in P9, that car having had another off, in fact, and letting everybody through, I think, jumping into the pits there, so retiring the car early as we come to the end of the 15-minute window, and Fletcher is on the final lap. Doherty in P10 and Mark Sykes in P11. Sykes not able to catch up to Doherty as it currently stands. But as they come around the circuit right now, we can see that Fletcher really on this final lap, and it is going to be a grand total of 9 laps for our race leader. And that'll be the distance of this race as he makes his way then through the final time for Sector 2, and then he'll be coming on to Sector 3 in a short while. And behind him, nobody really able to catch up. I can tell you that Matthew Addy has closed down at 0.4 of a second on Emmons over the previous lap. In fact, he's closed up a lot more time. He's closing up a huge amount of time right now, but then our time screen's updated. I think it's the case that Addy having a strong opening part of Sector 2, but then Emmons fighting back, of course, and perhaps just taking a little bit off of the tank there, just to calm himself down and get himself composed for the race. But as we see him make his way through turns 8 and 9, it's been a flawless opening race here from Fletcher, having led this one at the start, having out-qualified everybody by the best part of 0.8 of a second. He makes his way through Coram corner, then only one more corner to go after the extended right-hander, and in that Porsche 911 he's looked composed all along, and it is going to be a composed win in the sprint race for the British driver. He comes out of Murray's corner and decides to tap a little bit of sand there, but as he makes his way across the line, it's a win for Fletcher as he comes across the line to complete the sprint race. Behind him, it's going to be Colin Martin, who finishes in P2, 9.3 seconds behind. A solid result for Martin, and he'll be looking forward to the feature race, no doubt. And then in P3, it will be Alex Everett, who comes across the line in the Ferrari there, having had a solid performance. And Emmons, able to hold on to P4 when all's said and done, despite the pressure from Addy. He comes across the line in the Audi, Addy in P5 in the Ferrari, and then it's going to be Bland in P6-9. He can do better in the race if he's not able to put it in the wall. And then we can see that Sigurd right now, I think, will be kicking himself massively. He was on for P4 despite the pressure, but then making that one mistake at Hamilton. He'll come home in P7, and then it will be Stock, who's made a bit of an off somewhere out on circuit here. We're just trying to ascertain where he's gone wrong. I think that actually looks like that's Murray's corner, but I think it will be Stock who comes home in P8 when all is said and done. Oh, wait, he's just very slowly rejoining on the circuit right now. Doesn't need to do any major theatrics, of course. Just get the car under control. In fact, that was coming out of what looked to be bomber hole corner, so coming into Coram right now, and he recovers it, but he makes his way around the final corner, around Murray's corner, to complete our top 8, and then it is going to be, as he crosses the line very shortly, congratulations to Stock, it will then be Doherty who comes home in P9, a lap down on our race leaders, but still a solid performance after recovering the car for the Irishman, and plenty more time out there in the feature race. He comes across to finish in P9, and then it will be Delaney who will be the last of our drivers to finish out on circuit. What Sykes having already finished some time ago, being a lap down. So Sykes will come home in P11, and Delaney will be coming home in our final top 10 position. The British driver here crossing the line, and that completes our race number 1. And congratulations once again to our top 3. None more so than our race winner, Billy Fletcher, who put in an absolutely huge performance and is just about to bring it into the pits. And you can see Fletcher and Martin both racing one another around a little bit here. And I think Martin tried to send the message to his rival here. Look, Fletcher, I know you had a good run in race number 1, but I can be there with you in the feature race. You've got to watch out for this BMW. We're not going to be walked over. But we'll wait and see, as we see Everett right now just cooling down the car here. And I think for Everett, he'll be pleased with the fact he was able to do a solid performance off the line. He had that pressure from Addy, no doubt, but he drove a solid race in the Ferrari, and he'll be thinking to himself, right, I'm starting now down towards the back of the field. If there's 11 cars, I'll be starting in P9. I need to get this together and make sure I can jump some places, because we saw the fact that Martin got caught out massively at the start with the way Fletcher decided to make the start happen, and that's something which, of course, Everett will have to watch out for. Watch out for drivers who get caught out at the start as he makes his way into the pit. We've already had Addy jump into the pit. All of our drivers are coming in right now, but a fantastic race number 1, and we look forward to the feature race. We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, in approximately 15 to 20 minutes for the feature race. Don't go anywhere. We will be back in a short while. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back in preparation for the feature race. Now, taking a look at our timings, of course, we are running a little bit behind schedule. We're running approximately 5 to 10 minutes behind schedule right now, more towards the 5-minute range. As you can see, our drivers are just being allowed back into the race lobby as it currently stands. And then after the remaining 5 minutes of this quote-unquote practice session, then we'll be getting underway. As you remember last time, when we took a look at our schedule, we saw that we went straight from the sprint race to the feature race, and the feature race is 4 times the length of the sprint race. It is a total of 60 minutes, and it has that all-important pit stop, where our drivers will have to take on fuel. Whether they choose to take tyres or not will be entirely optional, and that is where the big strategic element comes in, and our drivers have those major considerations with regards to what do I take on in the pits. Do I go for a fresh set of boots and decide to charge around the circuit and unleash the pace, or do I just take with a single set of tyres and try to avoid degrading my tyres any further if degradation is quite low on the circuit, and try to eke the performance of the car out over the course of the entire race distance? Now, for most of our drivers here, they've had experience of doing this over the course of multiple test events, and none more so than the likes of Colin Martin, who we can see here making his way around the circuit right now. Now, of course, Martin has a little bit of a reputation right now of being the driver who doesn't seem to get it right on the strategy. He seems to pit at the right time for his first stop as he makes his way through Coram, but he always seems to have to come back into the pits for a second stop, normally because of fuel by the sounds of things, and he'll be looking to finally break that curse for the 3rd time of asking as he makes his way around the Snetterton circuit tonight. So that'll be the big question. There is no defined pit window in this race either. Our drivers can pit whenever they choose to, so long as they do make that mandatory pit stop. So it's not as though we have a defined 10-minute window in which everybody piles into the pit. It is the case they can pit whenever they decide to. Of course, we may see additional pit stops if we do have damage picked up by some of our drivers. Now, on top of that as well, you may notice that some drivers are running slightly different cars for the purposes of this race. For example, we can see that Matt Emmons here running in the Mercedes AMG, indeed running a Petronas-inspired or a Formula 1 Petronas-inspired livery there on the Mercedes AMG, and looking very fancy indeed. And this is all part of the test session, with the fact that our drivers are allowed to change up their cars between the races to get a feel for what works and what doesn't work. It's all that key information which will influence their car choice, because once they've made their car choice in the week prior to the commencement of the season, as of Wednesday the 14th of June, that's it. They're not allowed to change cars anymore. They have to run with those cars for the entirety of the season, and they are stuck with it. So they want to get the right car. Now, you may be wondering, okay, well, how does a driver go about choosing a car? What's the best way to do it? Some of you may be thinking, well, do they pick the car that's the best in terms of the overall balance of performance of the cars in the GT3 category? Well, some will look towards that sort of chart of what's hot and what's not. And we've seen a good number of drivers running in the Ferrari, and Darren Doherty being one of them. The Ferrari has proven very popular in the course of the test event. However, that's only an indicator of a car that can perform very well, i.e. the best cars, or the quote-unquote best cars in terms of, say, lap times and overall performance. But then it comes down to the individual driver's preference. You may pick the best car, it could be the Ferrari for example, but what have we seen about the Ferrari over the course of the test races? Well, it's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, and it naturally has a very large amount of oversteer to it. It's not a stable car, and when it goes over raised curbs as well, although we don't have too many raised curbs here at Snetterton in sectors 1 and 2, but we definitely do in sector 3, as we see our drivers make their way up through Brundle, so that's turn 8 for the uninitiated. That is where the Ferrari gets caught out, and also the camber change in the road going through Bombhole Corner at turn 10. That is something which catches our drivers out, and our Ferrari drivers and our Porsche drivers have been caught out by that. So immediately, some of our drivers may not be comfortable with dealing with that situation with the car, but the car will naturally want to oversteer and react to bumps in the road. So instead, they may go for something that's a more stable platform, and that's where we have the likes of the BMW M4, alternatively the Mercedes AMG. Front engine rear wheel drive cars are are typically more stable. They want to understeer naturally. They want to go straight rather than rotate through a corner because all the mass is to the front of the car. So as a result, under braking, the car will automatically lurch forward more gradually by comparison with our mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, where you essentially have all the weight in the rear of the car wanting to come forward as the driver rotates the car through the corner. And that's the difference between oversteer and understeer, and why car choice is so important. And we'll see that again next week at Bathurst, a very different circuit, and that is going to influence our drivers once again, because Bathurst, you could argue, is a power circuit with a very tricky uphill and downhill section. We've got a lot of gradient changes around the corners, whereas here at Snetterton we've got a very flat circuit for the most part, with one or two sharp camber corners, such as for example bomb hole, but beyond that it's a relatively flat circuit with small undulations, and as a result our drivers are looking for a more technical car that's more comfortable flying through particular corners. Now, looking a little bit further down the order, I can tell you that stock is remaining in the Ferrari, as is Everett. We've also got Seeger deciding to go to the Jägermaster liveried BMW M4 as well, so he's made the switch to the BMW. We've got Fletcher, who is just still on the process of joining us, I believe, if he's going to return. And we've got Bland out here in the Ferrari. Addy is running around in the Porsche, the Martini Racing inspired Porsche there, and we've got Delaney in the pits, as I understand it, in the BMW. But we are about to get underway then with the grid for the race. So as all of our drivers line up here, of course, with it being the reverse grid, it will be Delaney starting on pole with Doherty alongside him. Stock and Seeger making up the second row. Bland and Addy on that third row. A very potent combination. They're two very fast drivers if they can nail it. And then Emmons and Everett on the fourth row. And Martin and Fletcher are P2 and P1 finishers in the sprint race, starting at the back. Unfortunately, we won't be seeing Sykes making a return to the circuit. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to make the feature race. We wish him all the best and well done to him for finishing the opening race. But we're going to have 10 drivers, and we look forward to seeing how they all get on as we wait to get underway with the rolling start. So the pace car starts to take us away, and it is going to be Doherty and Delaney who lead us off the line. And of course Delaney there making the switch to the BMW. We're going to see a change in performance between the two cars here, and it's going to be the big question, of course, who's going to have the run down towards turn one. Well, if everybody was to place their bets on here, we'd expect Delaney might try to get the jump on Doherty, but again Doherty will be the one who controls the pace as they make their way through the corner here. And we can see now it's going to be Delaney who's at the front of the pack, but Doherty will need to catch up a little bit, although it looks so in fact it's going to be Delaney who makes the break immediately. And as a result of that, as they go green, gaining from that and charging away very quickly and making his way up towards turn number one. And as he makes his way through the right hander here, everybody getting through the corner nice and compact and looking very safe indeed. Although we can see there that Stock going a bit wide, and there's a bit of contact I think between himself and Seeger. Seeger going for the move, and there's major contact as it looks as though there we've had Bland have a huge mistake on the brakes. Cold brakes down, cold tyres, and the front end of the car deciding to just go simply into the Jägermeister BMW there. But the BMW has held on for the time being, but Bland really losing control of the car there on those cold brakes into the turn number two there. And as they make their way out of 3 and up towards 4 here, we can see that ahead of them we've got Addy in a battle. We've got Everett as well battling in there, and Addy in the Porsche, and there's been a huge crash, and I'm not sure who's kicked off that, but we've had 5 cars have a major incident going into Agostini, and now we look back and see what happened. So as they're making their way up towards Agostini corner, we can see we've got Emmons here in the BMW. Now, he looked absolutely fine going into the corner here. It looks so whatever happened, it was the Porsche behind, and then the Ferrari just getting it wrong as well in a completely separate incident. And I don't think Emmons is going to be too pleased with that, with the Porsche knocking him. And it looks as though the Porsche has been able to get away with it as we just make a slight update to our timing screen, which has glitched, but it will come back very shortly. And there you go, that's been fixed for you. But I can tell you right now, all the way out front and leading still by 1.4 seconds, albeit being reeled in very gradually right now, is Delaney, having had that brilliant start there in the British-inspired liveried BMW M4, leading quite comfortably. As we look a little bit back, and we can see Fletcher really mounting the pressure on Doherty here as they go to the end of Coram Corner and up towards turn number 12. But coming across the timing line now to complete lap number 1 is Delaney. He's ahead of Seeger by 1.4 and by 1.1 seconds. Then it is Stock in third. Then we've got Doherty in P4, but there's a three-way battle going on for P4 right now, which we'll stay with. It's going to be Doherty versus Fletcher. Fletcher trying to go round the outside as Doherty tries to block to the inside here, and we see that as they go into the corner, he's backed out of it entirely there, and Everett follows through there, as there was a little bit of lag, but I think it is the case that for Doherty, just having a wounded car, that car does not look happy, and we see that Fletcher and Everett now up into P4 and P5 respectively, as Doherty watches on from P6. Then we've got Addy down in P7 right now, trying to find his way back into the race after that contact with Emmons there, and we know that Bland chasing after these guys in P8, followed by Colin Martin in P9, having had a tumultuous start has Martin, not really been involved in the contact, but witnessing all the contact around him, and then Emmons all the way down in at P10, and continuing to press on all the same as our race leaders right now, making a breakaway, and we can see that Seeger is catching up to the back of Delaney as they go up into the right-hander here of Oogies, and as they come through at turn number 6 and up into Williams of 7 very shortly. I think Siegert's going to be the one who makes a move very shortly indeed, as they make their way out the corner here and come onto the straight, and we ride from the gearbox looking back from Delaney, and you can see here how Seegert is really starting to build up the slipstream, but Delaney getting the better run. Of course, both drivers being in the same car here, so as a result it all comes down to the driver's capabilities as they come down into 8 and 9, and he gets it very wrong, does Delaney, as he goes into the corner, and Seegert goes all the way around the outside. A masterful move there by Seegert, knowing how to anticipate the flow of the other driver, as he got it wrong there, did Delaney, and Delaney kept the car wide there, respecting the fact that Seegert was going to capitalise on it, and as a result now Seegert up into the lead with a fantastic pass as they make their way through Coram and up into turn 12. Oh goodness me, Delaney with the snap oversteer coming out to Coram corner, and that will absolutely scupper his chances of a potential podium here, as he's got to get that car recovered. But we can see right now battling for P2, it's Stock versus Fletcher. Stock goes to the outside into turn 1, Fletcher up the inside here. Fletcher of course being the fastest man around Snetterton in qualifying and in the sprint race, and he gets it done for P2, and now he's going to be chasing down Seegert, and Seegert is only the best part of a second up the road, and you have to imagine that Fletcher will be salivating at the prospect of taking the win. As we can see behind in P6, we've got Addy closing up to the back of Doherty here as they come through turn 2 Montreal corner and make their way up towards Palmer right now, and you'll note that ahead of him Doherty just not able to mount the pace as much as he would like, and I think Fletcher is already getting ready to make an attack on Seegert going through Agostini, and as they come through the corner here you've got Hamilton ahead, and you do have to wonder how long it'll be, as I hear that Addy has made the move there on Doherty, and Doherty I think has just let him through, although we will take a quick look at that. So coming out of Palmer corner then, we can see that Doherty defending, well, he just lifted off the throttle there, I think realising that he needs just the practice time out on the circuit. That definitely was not a major defence there, but I can tell you in the battle for the race lead as they make their way out onto the Bentley straight right now, Seegert being hounded by Fletcher, and look at the speed Fletcher has got coming out of Williams by comparison as they make their way down. Stock and Everett battling in the background, mind you, for P3, but as they go into turn 8 here, Seegert going a little bit deep on the brakes, and Fletcher getting the move done for P1, and now I think he is going to try and run away with this one as quickly as possible, as behind we can see Stock versus Everett, Ferrari on Ferrari action as they make their way through Bombhole and up towards Coram here, and it looks as though Everett getting ever closer to the back of Stock. Stock of course being the slightly slower Ferrari driver here, but he'll look to plant the car as much as possible, as I hear that Bland has passed Colin Martin for P7 off screen. We'll take a look back at that shortly for you folks, but right now we can see that Stock under a huge amount of pressure as Everett is getting closer and closer to him as they charge down towards turn number 1. We jump on board here with our driver as he makes his way down towards turn number 1 here. Into the corner he goes, and you can see keeping it nice together Everett here as he makes his way off of the apex and now charges up towards turn number 2. Into Montreal he goes. He looks to the inside. He tries to throw a dummy move versus Stock. Tries to get Stock to react at the last moment, but Stock not being perturbed, not being psyched out at this point. Now coming onto the accelerator. Down towards Palmer they go, and as they go into left-hander here, you can see how Seegert in front is struggling a little bit here, and he's going to be vulnerable to the pair of them in the next couple of laps if they don't fight too hard as they make their way up towards Agostini. Coming into the braking zone here, is Everett going to launch it down the inside? He's looking for it, but he's not quite close enough for the overlap, but you can see how Seegert is struggling through the corners here, and as a result Everett really on course to potentially pick up 2 places with a single pass if he gets his cards right here, as they make their way out towards Oogies and then up towards what will be Williams, and as they go through the double right hand sequence here, let's wait and see who's going to be the stronger driver, as we see Seegert here just able to pull away a little bit. He's got the best part of 8 tenths of a second over Stock as Stock comes out the corner here, and Everett now starts to close up once again with the slipstream toe all the way up towards the cars. As we see, they make their way down towards turn number 8 there, and as they come into left-hander here, I think it's going to be the case that Everett's not able to make the move as Stock comes across the centre into turn 8 and up into 9. And as they come through the corner here, there's no change so far, and they make their way through bomb hole once again. But you can see how Stock getting closer and closer to the back of Seagate here, and the BMW driver up ahead. It looks as though that car is just not in a happy place right now, and the German doing everything he can just to nurse it around. As we see their Stock having to brake early and go defensive. He was looking for the move on Seagate, but also mindful of the fact Everett would get very close there. And as they charge their way onto another lap, they go out onto lap number 5 here. It's no change so far, but these three are going to come together very rapidly. And thank you for clarifying, KTeams, in the Facebook chat that the timing tower is broken. Hopefully it's now working on your screen, because it is back up and working on ours. But do let us know if things are broken. We try to fix that as best as possible as they make their way down into turn 2 once again. And we hear that Colin Martin all over the back of Bland right now as they make their way through turn 1. And indeed the BMW driver, having had that off early, he had a small off on the circuit which enabled Bland to get past him. Now trying to find his way back up the order as they make their way up through at turn number 2, and I'm hearing the passes happening. What has happened here to Stock? He has had a major off. So going through turn number 3, just spun there and got it wrong. So Stock there under the pressure, making a major mistake, and he's dropping down the order now as he makes his way around in towards turn number 4 here, Agostini, and as he comes out of the corner down to P6, and you can see that Colin Martin trying to find every which way to get past the Ferrari train in front of him. He's got the best part of what is 3 Ferraris ahead, and then he's got Matthew Addy a little bit further up the order, and Everett as well, and we can see that Martin are looking for every way around, but he will do what he can, but he's got to wait. He's got to wait for his opportune moment to get past the Ferrari conga line here as they all make their way onto the Bentley straight once again. As they charge down here, it's going to be Martin versus Bland. He's going to pick off the first one here as Bland parks it to the centre of the circuit. He makes it a little bit difficult for Martin, but then peels back onto line as we see up ahead and Stock versus Doherty into turn 8 here. That is going to be Martin making the move up for P7. Oh, goodness me, and there's contact there off the back of what was Martin and Doherty, but Doherty had to slam on the brakes because Stock had a major off there. Let's take a look at what happened. So coming through the corner, it didn't look as though there was any contact between the two of them. There was no contact between the cars on our screen, so it just looks as though, by looks of Stock making another mistake, and the mistakes are creeping in now, and now Martin looking to scythe his way through the Ferrari pack. He's done 2, he's only got 1 more to go here, and it's going to be a drag race as they come onto lap number 6, and as they come across the timing line here, you can see the BMW starting to eke out the advantage in the acceleration as they go into the right-hander here of Riches. They come into turn 1, and he's got it done. Martin up into P5, and now up into the top 5. His next target, Matthew Addy. But as he makes his way down there, we can see behind that Doherty looking vulnerable now to Bland. Bland goes up the inside, the 2 Ferraris going side by side through Montreal corner there. But I think it was always going to be the case that Doherty wasn't going to put up a huge defensive fight because he lost so much momentum in the battle to turn 1 versus Martin. And in the end, it's the case that Bland has made his way up the order. But he's gone off Bland, and it means that Doherty's back up into P6. So many drivers here just not able to keep the car on the circuit for an extensive period of time. They're pushing so hard and they're pushing beyond the limits, and that is where they're getting caught out by these cars in the test season. As what I can tell you right now, in the battle for P2, Seagate is holding on right now, and Everett in P3 is closing down. The gap is now down to 8 tenths per second, and he is continuing to close up very gradually here, and we'll wait to see what is going to happen. But you can note how Everett is starting to eke out that time. Every little area he is finding a way to get closer to the BMW driver in front, as our race leader Fletcher is now 6 seconds up the road from these two, and just gradually making his way off into the distance, and we're only 11 minutes in to the hour race. But looking a bit further back, we can see that Emmons, by comparison, in P8, having to make that recovery after what was a very difficult set of opening laps. Although we then look back up and we can see, I think Addy has had an off or made a mistake somewhere, because that car is not looking very happy. And I'm hearing he's actually had a major incident in the final sector, as we hear new fastest out of 48.251 for Fletcher. And now Martin up into P4. Let's take a look at what happened to Addy. So coming down into turn 8 here, what's going to happen to the Martini Porsche? He goes into 8 and the rear end snaps on him as he comes down under braking, and he just clips the apex curb there of turn 9, and that was very fortunate. I'll tell you this now, folks, if he hadn't clipped that apex curb, that car would have gone off into the weeds, but instead that actually helped rotate the car because the rear wheels decided to flick the car around for him, and that is a very fortunate bit of control. Great catch by Addy though as well, but that was fortunately he clipped that curb. I've not seen something like that at Snetterton for a good number of years happen, but it has happened now in this league, and we'd love to see it. Well, we'd love to see the driver catch the car but not have the incident, but a very good catch there by the Brit as they make their way down towards Agostini once again here. Into left-hander they go, and I can tell you that Everett getting closer and closer in P3 to Seager in P2, but it looks as though Martin just starting to eke out the gap he wants now, as we hear that Emmons has made a pass for P7 versus Doherty, and we're going to take a look back and see what happened. So going through turn number 1 then, we're going to see that Emmons just made his way around the outside of the Ferrari driver and got it nailed, and now chasing down George Bland. Looking back up front though, looking up to this battle for P2, it's been building for some time, and you'll note that Everett now the closest he's ever been to Seager as they make their way out of bomb hole and up into Coram. They come into the right-hander here, and it's going to be the case as they make their way flowing through the corner. Can Everett keep close enough here in order to mitigate the straight line speed advantage that BMW seems to have just down the straight in the run from the centre straight all the way down towards Rich's corner? They're going to come across the timeline here, and now watch that gap opens up to half a second. It now starts to creep down with a little bit of slipstream here, but I don't think it's going to be enough for Everett unless he can do something masterful on the brakes, or he can maintain the higher apex speed through Rich's corner up towards Montreal. He's going to go for it, but you can see under braking there he just falls back a little bit initially and then starts to close up once again, and his off apex speeds are his stronger component compared to Seager, but Seager may be just able to maintain more speed into the corners, and that is the back and forth between these two as they make their way down towards Palmer corner. No move from Everett as it currently stands, but what I can tell you right now, Stock battling with Doherty into turn 1 here. They're side by side, the two Ferrari drivers. You've got Stock on the inside versus Doherty, and he's made the pass. He's up into P8 and continuing to press up the field and trying to recover this drive as we hear that Addy, oh my goodness me, what has happened to Addy here? He's had an off, and that is coming out of Montreal corner there. Let's take a look at what happened. So coming down towards Montreal then under brake, and the car, it looks as though the brakes just simply locked up and he had to release the brakes, as I'm hearing that Delaney has had a major off. Oh goodness me, that BMW does not look a happy car at all. That looks as though it's had a major incident, but Fletcher had a brief off briefly. We'll take a look back at what happened to Delaney shortly, but right now focusing on the battle for P2, it resumes, and as they make their way down towards down the Bentley straight here in towards turn 8 and 9, you can see how Everett putting that pressure on, flashing his lights as well, trying to get in the head of Seager as much as possible. Perhaps he's trying to say to Seager, I'm not going for the move, take the natural racing line, or perhaps he's trying to deceive him. All's fair in love and war, of course, as long as there's no bumping and tapping, otherwise the stewards might be waggling the fingers at this one. But what you can see is that Everett definitely the stronger coming out of sector 2 into sector 3, but as soon as they get into sector 3, you'll notice it's under braking where Everett's the stronger driver, but then as soon as Seager gets on the throttle, that's where he opens up the gap. And again, it's turns like turn 1, turn 3 as well, the sweepers, where this BMW just seems to have the greater momentum by comparison with the Ferrari behind him, and that's what Everett's got to try and find. He's got to try and Seager make a mistake in a sweeper. That's where he'll gain the time. You can see here, they come through Rich's corner. There's no change because the BMW maintains its speed. They now go into Montreal, a heavy braking zone, and this is where Everett closes up so much. It's under heavy braking, but there's not enough of a run here from Montreal to Palmer corner, and as a result, as they make their way into left-hander here, you can see that Seager can just naturally take the line he wants to because he knows that Everett's not going to be able to do it, but Everett is looking very close. He's looking for a potential move here. He's going to go up the inside into Agostini. Will he get it done into the hairpin-esque corner as they go through? He's on the inside, and as they come out here, it's going to be a drag race, but it looks as though Seager just went a little bit wider there than perhaps he anticipated, and the move is done by Everett for P2, but can he hold on to it? I'm sure Seager would love to have a word back. The German driver versus the Brit, they've been battling non-stop for the best part of the last 3 laps, and let's wait and see as they come through Williams. Is it going to be a return play from Seager, or will it be the case that Everett is able to pull back? Well, he's definitely in the tow, and he's had the better run out of Williams. He's building up the speed as Seager. He's going to be looking to the inside, is he? As they come up in towards turn 8, he's flashing his lights here. I think he's trying to say, look, I'm not going to go for the move. He pulls out of the air and decides to just simply back it off, doing what Everett did to him a lap ago. Great respect shown between these two drivers right now as they make their way down towards Bombhole corner once again, and this fight continues on. But meanwhile, looking back, we can see that Emmons now up into P6 and chasing after Bland here as they make their way down the Bentley straight into the left-hander here. And as they come into the corner, I think Emmons is going to be looking for the move as soon as possible. And Bland, he'll want to be up into that top 5 as Fletcher sets a new fastest lap of 47.932. I mean, Fletcher is absolutely phenomenal. He's going to be adding even more feathers to his bow very shortly. He's just absolutely flying away as Delaney had to pull into the pits with that damaged BMW. We saw him have the major incident, but he's coming out of the pits now. In fact, he's jumped back to the pits. I think they're going to be retiring that car or having to do more repair work to it, because it's definitely not in a good state, Delaney's car. But meanwhile, focusing on the here and now on screen, you can see Emmons versus Bland. Bland getting the better run out of turn number 12 out of Murray Corner and heading up now towards Riches once again here. And I think the AMG, the more stable car of the two, is it's what's giving Emmons the ability to chase the Ferrari. He just feels happy with the layout of the car. We saw it was very twitchy in the Audi in the sprint race from Emmons when he was testing the Audi, and now in this race he's really starting to come alive as he rides high there on the apex curve in Montreal, the race sausage curve. But what you can see, they're not having to worry because the Mercedes is so planted with its weight, and that is what's working in his favour right now, is he's able to abuse the car more. He's able to ride the higher curbs compared to the Ferraris and the other mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, and even the BMW in the front-engine rear-wheel drive class to some extent, just not feeling as comfortable. What I can also tell you is that Everett has pulled away from Seeger in the battle for P2. He's now opened up a gap of 1.4 seconds. That battle has subsided for the time being, but of course we'll wait and see what happens in the strategy element when the pit stops occur. But after 18 minutes, this is how it's all played out so far, and we can see that Emmons getting a little bit closer as we jump on board with the British driver as he makes his way through Williams and down the straight, and you'll hear the blistering roar of that V8 engine. As he makes his way down to the left to right combination here, coming heavily down on the brakes. The difference you can see here is the fact there's so much more confidence in Emmons as we see Bland there actually making a mistake and oversteering out the corner, and as a result that Ferrari looking very sketchy on its tyres now, and I do think it will be the case that Emmons will be looking to make a move. He's definitely putting a lot of pressure on Bland, and that is the difference between the two cars, the instability of that Ferrari, as we see that a tiny bit of snap oversteer actually from Emmons coming out of corner, but Bland got it even worse there coming out of the final corner. So as they charge down the straight here towards turn number 1, it is going to be Emmons up into P5, and they make their way across the timing line, and as they come into Rich's corner once again, it is now Emmons up into P5, but he goes a little bit deep into turn 1, and this could be Bland's opportunity to come back, and he's into the wall. Goodness me, Emmons just going a little bit too wide, and the car has had to be thrown back to the pits. That's critical damage to the car, and that's a disaster for the Mercedes driver. He was doing so well, and now it's all fallen apart with one little mistake through Rich's. Whether they'll be able to get that car repaired or not, that'll be the big question. But after what is a 19.5 minutes, almost 20 minutes, to give you a quick summary so far, Fletcher is leading out front right now by 11.3 seconds over Alex Everett in P2. The Porsche leading, the Ferrari chasing, albeit Everett a little bit of a pace gap between the two of them here, but Everett having battled his way up through the field, having cleared Seeger only a couple of laps ago. Seeger in P3 right now, the German in the BMW doing a very good job of keeping the Jägermeister machine together. And then in P4, it is Colin Martin, who had a very difficult time making his way up through the field from what was P9, his starting position. But having got himself up into P4, he's now there and continuing to push around all the same as he's making his way through Bombhole Corner as we currently speak. Then it's Bland in P5 after the battle between himself and Emmons, which saw Emmons go into the wall out of turn 1 there. I think Bland was thinking he'd lost the position, only to see Emmons then plant it into the wall, and he makes his way through turn number 10 right now and heads up towards corner 11. Stock behind him in P6, the one to have lost 3 places at the start of the race, and Stock having had a very up and down battle through the races so far, and continuing to press around in the Ferrari there and chasing after Bland. The gap between himself and Bland 2 seconds, going a bit deep there through Murray's corner. That's going to open that gap up to about 2.5 seconds come the end of the straight if he's not able to nail the braking into turn 1. And then it's going to be Doherty in P7 as it currently stands here. Doherty having a very tumultuous race as well. He's got Addy chasing missing him. Addy in the rear of your camera shot there, our P8 driver in the Porsche 911 versus the Ferrari ahead of him here, as I believe that is Emmons' race over. He is in the pits right now, as is Delaney. Both drivers retiring. We have lost 2 drivers. Emmons we just lost on the previous lap, so on lap number, what was at the time lap number 10 into 11, and we can see we lost Delaney a little bit earlier on with critical damage to his BMW when he put it into the wall coming out of Rich's corner on what was lap number 9. So that is the story of the race so far after 20 minutes. No pit stops for our leaders in terms of the scheduled pit stops. We've only seen 2 cars come into the pits, and that was because they were damaged cars as it is continuing. But oh goodness me, Emmons with a 3.5 minute tow. I've had it clarified to me he will be coming back out on circuit, but the car is absolutely wrecked because of that damage. So it's a 3.5 minute tow, and Emmons will be back out on the circuit, and we'll wait to see him come out in short order. And he's just clarified for us in the Facebook chat, which we're very grateful to him for, as our drivers continue to make their way around. But we see that Addy right now gradually closing up to the drivers ahead, as we see Fletcher going on to the next lap, and really just in a world of his own right now is Fletcher, and I think he's making everybody quiver all the same. And I'm not going to stop with the bow and arrow puns given the fact his surname is Fletcher. Well, I will stop with them actually, because it's probably a bit insensitive, as he makes his way through Montreal there, but gets it a little bit too deep through the corner, but he gets it back together, and it does look as though Fletcher able to keep things nicely together as he makes his way now through the left hand of what is turn number 3. Now looking further down the order, we can see Everett by comparison doing everything he needs to right now. He's pulled away from Seagate by the best part of what is 4 seconds, as we hear Emmons is making his way out of the pit lane now onto the circuit, but he is the best part of at least a lap down on the majority of the field, if not further. So Emmons now returning on lap number 11, as we hear that Addy in the battle with Doherty here as they come across the timing line. He's going to go for the move. This has been building up for the last couple of laps, and the Porsche driver on the inside going through into turn 1 here, but will Doherty find a way back, because Addy will of course lost a bit of momentum going through Riches up to Montreal. They go into the braking zone here. There's no change, and both drivers nailing the corner here, so I think it's going to be the case that Addy has cleared his way up into P number 7. As we see Doddy making his way through behind right now. And indeed, one thing to remind you all folks, and it's something that Emmons has just used to get back out on the circuit a little bit sooner, all of our drivers do have access to one fast repair in the pit in order to get the car repaired a bit faster. Essentially, it's a massive cup of coffee for the mechanics. As we take a brief sip of water, we can see that Stock right now is being able to close up to the back of Bland, and this battle has been building a little bit as we ride on board with Stock coming out of Williams' corner. He makes his way out of turn 9. You can see again just those differences in the driving styles, or the level of confidence between the 2 drivers. You can see how Bland takes bomb hole a little bit too aggressively, then he comes back onto the circuit, and Stock has nowhere to go but back out of the throttle completely there. But he'll be very aware of the fact that Bland is now vulnerable in sector 3 as they make their way out of the corner and go onto another lap there. And I think it's the case that Bland really pushing as hard as he possibly can, but the rear end of his Ferrari coming loose through the corners by comparison. And that is the key thing, I think, with regards to Bland versus Stock. Stock looks a little bit more composed at this point in the race, but Bland pushing the car further in terms of its limits, and then as a result of that, when he gets it right, he does pull away, but every time he gets it wrong with a little bit of additional oversteer through the rear of the car, that's where things don't quite work out as well. And you can see as they come out of the second corner there, it's a case that, again, Bland now pulls away a little bit. In fact, he gains 3/10 of the corner alone as Stock goes out onto the grass there and gets it wrong into Palmer, and the car swings across the circuit, and Emmons almost getting clipped there. Goodness me, Emmons literally having to make through a tiny little gap, but Stock getting it wrong with a little tap on the grass as all of our drivers are coming through right now, and he has to return to the circuit in short order. So Stock dropping down to P8 as Emmons is a lap down, of course, on Stock, trying to get himself back into the race. And if he can get himself back up into the order coming into this race, that'll be a huge achievement from being a lap down on the field, as we see Fletcher continuing to press on in P1 right now. But meanwhile, Everett in P2 coming through turn number 11 and making his way into 12. Once again, just swinging the car through the corner. They're going a little bit deep through Murray. You could see how he had to be very sensitive coming off the brakes there, because otherwise the car was going to lurch off of the exit curb. But he got it back together, and I think the tyre list is starting to kick in. Plus also that tyre wear element, the car not feeling it as comfortable anymore, as I'm hearing Bland has had a major crash. So this is Bland making his way down towards turn number 8 just now, and as he's coming into the corner here, does he come in too aggressively? He does indeed, and the rear of the car just snaps, and fortunately for him, he actually got the car stopped and parked it, but Emmons having to take major evasive action there, and Emmons getting the car back together just about, but that was near fatal for the drivers there. But Emmons, he's back out on circuit. Emmons having to deal with two very near close misses in a very short order. We could say he's the master of close shaves here, given the fact that he's come back out on circuit and immediately had to find his way through two very difficult scenarios, and perhaps third time's the charm. However, we'll wait and see. As we see, he makes his way on to another lap. 2 minutes and 3 seconds down on Bland, who's up in 8th place. And of course, Bland recently had that incident. And now Addy back up into P5, Doherty up into P6, and we've got Stock up into P7. As Doherty right now making his way down towards turn number 2, going for the braking zone in this P6 position. And nobody really close together right now out on circuit in terms of battling for position. But we will wait and see how things potentially close up over the course of the strategy, and also where drivers might start making mistakes. With that tyre wear coming into effect, and also the fuel coming out the car. And one thing about fuel as well, which is not to be doubted about, but it's the fact that some drivers will try to fill the fuel tank up as much as possible, because they do need to refuel over the race distance. They can't do the entire distance on a single tank of fuel. But there's always the big question of, do you run the car light on fuel, or do you run it heavy on fuel? If you run it light, then that means you are trying to get the best possible performance per stint, but you have to stay in the pits longer to put more fuel in the car to get you to the end. So that's the trade-off there, where if you run it heavy, then the car will be heavier, and as a result it should technically be slower per lap, particularly on the straights, because you've got more mass to move. But in terms of a car such as the Ferrari, for example, the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars of the Porsches, having the extra weight of the fuel in the back of the car can actually help the car feel a bit more stable through the corners, and that's something which our drivers will have to consider. But also having more fuel in the car means the car is heavier, and as a result it can wear on the tyres a little bit more, because you've got more weight being put and transferred through the tyres under braking and rotation. But what we can see is that Colin Martin coming away from fuel and brakes to lap times. We can see Colin Martin setting his personal best on that last lap, a 48.84, and the fastest lap we have seen all race has been a 47.93, as has been performed by Fletcher, our race leader. But we can note in our timing screens right now that the second fastest man out on circuit in terms of lap time is definitely Colin Martin. He is making his way up the order now as the BMW driver, and he has now got that gap to Seeger, who's just up ahead of another BMW driver, the lead BMW as it currently stands. As they both make their way through Hamilton Corner, that gap is now down to 3 seconds, and it is closing. Martin doing everything he can to find a way to catch up to Seeger and get himself onto the podium. And this is the man we need to watch out for the rest of this race, because I reckon now it's all about him trying to get himself up into P3, if not P2, come the end of this one. He's only got the best part of what is 9 seconds to Everett further up the road in P2. Looking further down the order, however, we can see that Stock right now in P7, he's chasing down Doherty once again, and these two really have had a number of comings together, and it's not really been great battling between the two, but one of them will make a fatal mistake, and that will put them all the way down the order, and then they have to recover, and they end up in a scenario where they're battling one another again. Of course, we love to see it, but we'd love both drivers to also try and keep it together a bit more out of the circuit. Of course, they're feeling the limits of the car, they're feeling the limits of the circuit. Hold on a second, who was that who's just spun out? Is that Matt Emmons? So that's coming out of what was Hamilton there, and he's just gone wide, and the car has said no. There's no grip out on the grass, and it's just spun. That's very unfortunate for Emmons, and he's going to have to do it all again in terms of the time he's made up as he tries to make his way back onto the lead lap with the guys in front. But with all of our drivers now coming up towards the half-an-hour mark here, this is where we may start to see some of the scheduled pit stops from our drivers, as we see Delaney making his way out of the pits here. And I think actually, no, Delaney is out of the race entirely. I should point out he has retired. I thought that was going to be an out signal to say he was coming out of the pits there. My sincere apologies for that. But what we can see, Fletcher continuing to push around, and the question will be at this point, will we see anybody go at dead on the halfway mark? We saw at Imola last week that most drivers decided to pit after 40 minutes. They went long on their stints, but will it be the same here at Snetterton? As Stock versus Doherty is now starting to build up. They both go on to lap number 17, and we can see that Stock dead in the slipstream of Doherty as they go into Rich's corner. Now, of course, with the fighting between these two and the fact they've only got Addy the best part of 5.5 seconds up the road from them, the question will be how much fighting do they want to do? To give you an idea as well, Addy is not too far off in terms of their pace right now. In terms of last lap, Addy was a 52.4, whereas Doherty was a 51.9, and then Stock was a 50.59. So Stock, they're really pushing on as we have an off there, and that is Addy. Well, they will not need to find a way past Addy because he's found a way to take himself out of the equation, as we just need to take a look back at what has happened to Addy. Well, he's just got off the circuit there as the camera pans around. He's gone off the circuit at Palmer Corner there, so it's just gone very wrong, and he's returned to the course there. So Addy having a very difficult time in the race, and now down to P7 and looking to chase after Stock and Doherty, who are making their way through Williams Corner very shortly. Doherty here, of course, being the lead Ferrari in the pair as we look back from the gearbox of Doherty, and you can see in the far off distance we have got Stock gradually trying to catch up here, albeit he's got a sizable gap there, as we hear that Colin Martin is into the pits. So Colin Martin is the first driver to jump into the pits, and this is going to be a scheduled stop, we assume, and his only stop, we would hope, after the numerous times he's made mistakes in terms of having to make multiple pit stops in the preceding test races. Hopefully he hasn't made that mistake here today, and we'll wait and find out what happens. But meanwhile, in that battle for P5, I can tell you that Stock right now being on the attack versus Doherty. He's trying to go around the outside to inside through Coram into Murray's. Oh, goodness me! And it was Doherty who just went to turn in, and Stock saw the space. Oh, and that is going to be an immediate pit stop for Stock, and I think he was going to schedule the pit stop anyway for soon, but that is going to be a quick repair as well for the car. And Doherty, well, that is a very unfortunate one to call there, and how would you call it is the big question. For me personally, I think it should have been the case that really for Stock, he knew he was going to go for the move and he saw the space there, but he wasn't with the overlap into the final part of the braking zone, and that's what Doherty would argue is why he could turn, and he just didn't see Stock go for the lunge on the inside there. But it'll be one for the stewards to look at. I can't really give you a definitive answer on that one. Part of me wants to say it's a racing incident, part of me wants to say it was a little bit of a lack of awareness from Doherty for the potential lunge given how much Stock was on his rear end. But regardless, they press on all the same here. Let me know what you think in the chat, of course, with regards to that one. But we can see Addy now back on the attack, and he's immediately going on the offensive versus Martin, who is ahead of him, of course. And Martin has just come out of the pits, I should point out. He's come out in P5 as we see Stock is coming out of the pits as well. He's in P8 as he comes out of the pits. He's the last of our runners on the lead lap as it currently stands. But of course, Addy right now, he's going to drop Martin very short, in terms of Martin will pull away from him, given the fact Martin's on the new fuel tank and also most likely on fresher tyres. And we can see behind right now, Bland trying to push on and chase after Addy as quickly as possible. And as they make their way down the Bentley straight here, we can see that at the head of your picture that Martin attacking Doherty, albeit it's just slightly off camera here, as they all come down into turns 8 and 9 here, and all 4 of them are making it through very safely, as we see Martin making the move here into bomb hole corner, and he's going to go up the inside. It's going to be a simple pass here, and I think it was the case that Doherty decided to let him through. There was no point fighting, and indeed Doherty in more of a battle with Addy at this point, as they make their way through Coram here, and they come into the right into left combination, and as they make their way through the corner, you can see how Doherty just having the rear end let go on him as he made his way through the corner. I think a pit stop's going to be due very shortly. Indeed, both Doherty and also Addy both into the pits as Bland is promoted to P5, and we see there Emmons unlapping himself from these guys, but he's still got plenty to go as both of them are into the pits, and it's going to be a battle of the pit stops. Meanwhile, our race leader now 23.5 seconds ahead of P2 man Everett. It's your race leader of Billy Fletcher. Continues to do a very good job out front right now and really just run away with this race. Nobody's touching him right now as he makes his way onto another lap. And indeed, the question will be, when is he going to pit? And I assume he's trying to eke out as much of the gap as possible to give himself the space to come out and clear air out on the circuit, as it will be Addy who is the first to come out of the pit by comparison with Doherty, and I think that is because Addy didn't have as much damage on the car, and as a result that is why he's now up into that position. But I suspect that Doherty is going to be coming out the pits in very short order as well. They make their way out onto the circuit, then does Addy, as we see Stock actually coming through here, and Stock was the first of these guys to pit. So as a result, Doherty has lost a place to Stock as well, and Doherty only just now coming out of the pit lane, so that is a bit of a shock to the senses here. But Stock now up into P7 on track position, and we expect that he's going to be chasing down Addy very gradually. The gap between himself and Addy, of course, being at 10.7 seconds as they make their way through another lap of the circuit. Our race leader, we can see, just making his way through Oogies right now, and then coming up to Williams' corner and just really in a world of his own. Indeed, the gap's opening up around the field, and Colin Martin, having pitted, will be now starting to try and close down on Sigurd and also Everett. And I should point out to you right now, in terms that the last lap in particular, as we look at our P4 man Colin Martin, so he's going to come across the timeline, and I believe this will be his first flying lap, the last lap of his being an out lap, if you will. We will just check that on our time screen very shortly for you, but as he comes across the line here, as we see that Bland is entering the pit lane actually, and that means as he comes into the pit lane, it will be the battle of the pit stops between himself, Addy, Stock and Doherty. We'll wait and see how that all plays out. But Martin's previous lap was a 49.23, whereas Sigurd was a 51.63 and Everett was a 49.27. So Everett matching Martin for pace, but Sigurd definitely struggling on pace right now as we look around the circuit. And the question will be, can Martin jump Sigurd through the pit stop sequence as he makes his way through Palmer corner once again, going through turn number 3 for what is the 20th time of asking. Now coming up to the braking zone for Agostini. Everett, meanwhile, all the way up in P2, and again, I suspect will be due for a pit stop within the next 5 to 6 minutes. He goes past the pit lane entry once again, as we see Bland coming out the pits here, and Bland up into P5 after all the pit stops, so nailing it on the pit stop there, and you are now looking at your number 5 finisher as it currently stands. If the race were to end now, Bland would be very happy with this performance, using the pit stop window and also the clear space on track just to get himself ahead of Addy, Stock and Doherty, and those guys are all chasing after him, of course, and Addy is the closest one in that sequence in P6. He is only the best part of 2.5 seconds down, as we see Bland there making a small mistake coming out of Palmer corner, and Bland really needs to get, if he's changed the tyres or not, we're not 100% sure, but he needs to get switched on and do it fast, because Addy is hunting him down right now and has already yoinked the best part of 3 attempts out of him, just out of the first 2 parts of Sector 2, and he's going to be ripping that time down even further if things continue as they are. But we're keeping an eye on that gap between Martin and Sigurd. The gap right now is 48.2 seconds, and we'll wait to see if it comes down any further over the course of the current laps as these drivers make their way around. They go through Williams' corner right now, and we can see that Addy doing everything he can to try and close down Bland, but Bland opening that gap back up right now, and I think starting to get the car switched on and doing enough to stay safe for the time being. With what is 22 minutes of the race remaining, can Bland hold on for what is a suspected P5 finish? And it would be a fantastic one if he can, as he goes a little bit deep into turn number 9 there, and as he comes through bomb hole once again, you can see how Addy is doing everything he can to close up right now. To give you an update meanwhile, as we see that we've got Evans, the last of our runners right now. We've only had the one retirement of Delaney. Evans in P9, he's now only 49 seconds off of Doherty. I say only 49 seconds, he was 2 minutes and 3 seconds behind only the best part of approximately 20 minutes ago in the race. So Evans doing everything he can right now to chase down the P8, P7, P6 and P5 pack. If he can do that and chase down the midfield, that would be a miracle in the remaining 20 minutes. But say it ain't so, it can be done. But we look back up to our race leaders, and we can see Everett going past the pit lane once again, very comfortable in the car right now, but I'm sure it's going to be the case that soon he will have to pit, given the fact that he has got to make a pit stop at some point, and we haven't got that long to go in the race as he makes his way out of Montreal corner and heads down towards Palmer. But looking back right now to our battle for P5, it's opened up a little bit there, as we see that it is the case that Bland has opened that gap up to 2.8 seconds and is doing everything he needs to. He's got the car switched on, he's got it in a comfortable place, and Addy not able to close that gap down. If anything, it is open up Agostini there. Another 2 attempts opened up alone for the Agostini hairpin as they make their way now down towards Oogies, and then they come through at Williams very shortly after. I think Addy at this point, perhaps just feeling that he needs to get some composure in, although he's been driving consistently recently, I think perhaps needs to settle down a little bit and accept that he may only be able to achieve P6 right now, but then if he settles down now and gets Bland to overdo it, then it may be the case that later on Bland makes a critical error. Alternatively, Addy, by saving the car, can then go on the offensive towards the end, and he does have our P2 man gradually coming through up the field there to lap him, and he's also got Stock only 6.6 seconds behind, so Addy needs to think about protecting his position just as much as he does about chasing down Bland right now, because Stock is not too far away and could catch up should there be 1 or 2 mistakes. As Fletcher comes across the timeline to go on to lap 23, and a 48.2 there for our race leader, who you're seeing on your screen right now, and I'm really just running away with this in the Porsche. Not being caught up or matched by anybody right now and just eking out lap after lap. And his previous sector 3 was a 35.77, the fastest we've seen from anybody so far over the course of the race, and this is phenomenal. You have to say, it is incredible the amount he's dominating this race by at the moment, but we will wait and see a little bit later on as we see Stock there setting his personal best of the race of 49.875 so far, and he's now only 6.5 seconds off of Addy, who is up the road and is still falling away from Bland as they go onto another lap, onto lap 22 for these guys. As we continue to see our drivers make their way around, we've got 19 minutes of this race to go now, and what I can tell you is that nobody really closing up at this time at the moment. Addy definitely falling away from Bland as it stands. It's now open to 3.8 seconds though. It's closed up a little bit there for Agostini, but you see it opens back up on the timing screen right now as Addy makes a mistake there coming out of Agostini, and that's going to close the gap down between himself and Stock there by approximately 2 to 3 tenths of a second naturally. So it is the case that he is going to be gradually caught up, and I suspect that as time goes on here, it is going to be the case that Addy will be feeling that pressure and falling closer and closer towards Stock. And then what will Stock do to get himself up into P6? That'll be the big question as we continue to wait and see when the next battle is going to kick off right now. But I think Addy versus Stock is going to happen at some point, as we see that Addy lifting off the throttle a little bit before tucking in behind Everett. Everett coming through from P2 there, a lap ahead right now. Everett being on a lap number 23, whereas these guys are on lap 22 as they make their way onto sector 3. And Stock, by comparison, the gap between himself and Addy now down to 3.5 seconds. He's doing everything he can, Stock, in order to catch up, and he is pushing as hard as he can in order to do so. And you have to imagine that Stock's going to be taking a good amount of life out of the car by doing this, but in return, if he can get it done, he is going to look very potent going into the finale. And perhaps even he could catch up to Bland, who will be the best part of 8 seconds up the road from him by the time he's closed up the gap to Addy, we suspect. Making his way onto another lap then is Stock, and we wait to see how much he can close this gap down, as he's now firmly got Addy in his sights. He can see him nice and clearly as he makes his way into Montreal. The gap now down to 2.5 seconds, and Stock doing everything he needs to. But everybody's settling down really into this race. We are still waiting for our top 3 to make their pit stops, and Martin, I should tell you right now, as we look at our P4 driver here, Colin Martin, the British driver is 44.8 seconds down on Seeger, and not been closing up the gap as rapidly as perhaps we would have hoped, in the fact that on the previous lap, Seeger at 51.03 and Martin at 49.43. So the gap came down there by the best part of 1.5 seconds, and that does seem to be the overall trend in terms of the lap times there. But we have to wonder how much time Martin spent in the pits versus what Seeger's going to spend, and whether he will be able to jump the fellow BMW driver, the German BMW driver, who you are looking at right now as he's making his way into Oogie's corner right now, and then he'll be coming up to Williams very shortly. And it's going to be close between these two, and they were quite evenly matched by the time Martin came into the pits, and we see that Martin is continuing to strip the time out of Seeger quite rapidly here, but perhaps not the 2 seconds we were hoping a lap, as we hear that Darren Doherty has had a very small off on the circuit, but he has rejoined. That was on a lap 23 just moments ago, but that has only just happened and nothing too fatal coming off it. I believe he has got himself into what is P8 still. He's still in that P8 position, but he is pushing onwards all the same, as Stock now all over the back of Addy. He has made the closure up now, and the gap between himself and Bland is now the best part of 8.5 seconds, but he's got to find a way past Addy first as they make their way down the straight here towards turn number 1 once again, and they go on to lap number 24. Now for Stock, he knows he can close up to Addy rapidly over the course of a lap, so he's going to have options of where he can do it. He seems to be faster out of the two of them, looking at their sector times across all 3 sectors as they make their way in towards Montreal corner here. Is this where he could potentially make gains? Well, you can see there how Addy had a very poor run through Montreal on the apex. He just simply parked the car on the apex. He couldn't seem to get it stopped as much as he'd like to and carry the momentum through, and this is going to give Stock everything he needs right now in order to close up. As Addy goes wide there, Stock takes evasive action, And Stock is now up into P6. He jumps back onto the racing line here, and Addy has really struggled with the Porsche at the start of this stint, and you can see it's continuing there with Stock, having got himself now up into P6 and pressing onwards here with only 15 minutes to go. And the only three who have not pitted, of course, are our top three right now, and surely they've got to have pit stops coming up anytime soon, because they are going incredibly deep into the race here. And I think Martin's going to be scratching his head and going, oh come on Seeger, when are you going to pit? But as we look at Addy right now, just struggling with the car through the corners, but Stock now on the move. And to give you an idea, could Stock catch up to Bland? That's probably the next question you're asking for the British driver there, the Brit versus the British driver ahead of him, of course. Well, on that previous lap, Stock was a 50.52, Bland was a 51.36, so he's closing up approximately 8 tenths to a second a lap. And if he continues in this sequence, given the fact we do have approximately 7 laps to go, I think Stock is going to be in the region of a second, if not close enough to Bland come the final lap. He may be in a position to go for a move right at the end of the race, but we will wait and see what Stock's able to do. Of course, he's had to battle with Bland on this lap, so his lap was compromised a little bit coming out of Palmer corner, but as he makes his way across the timing line, Stock, it was a 51.487 for Bland. Meanwhile for Stock, it was, as we see our time screen update, a 50.956, so he still took half a second out of Bland ahead of him. As we see coming into the pits, there's Seegert from P3. Now this is critical. This is going to be the decider, we reckon, for who finishes on the bottom step of the podium. Will it be Seeger or will it be Martin? I can tell you that Martin right now is making his way through turns 8 and turn 9 going into sector 3, and there is a sizable gap between them. It is a gap of 42 seconds, but we expect it will be a relatively long pit stop for Seeger as he's in the pits right now. Martin making his way into Coram corner as we speak. He's got 2 corners to go, but Seeger already coming out of the pits here, and I think this is going to be more than enough from Seeger. So Martin again, whilst he did pick the strategy, and I think Martin's going to be able to do the race to the end this time, as we hear Emmons coming into the pits now. It's going to be Colin Martin as he comes across the timeline here. He's still in P4, but what's the gap, you ask? That gap is going to be, as he comes through Rich's corner, that will give us a true indication of where the gap currently lies. It is going to be a gap of approximately 8.4 seconds that he's going to have to close up for the remainder of this race as our race leader comes into the pits, and Martin will want to hunt that gap down like a man possessed as our race leader Fletcher comes in for his mandatory pit stop. And I think this one is going to be just a simple jaunt to the pits, knowing that Everett also has to do the same very shortly. And as a result of that, I think Fletcher can just take it easy right now, getting a sensible stop. The pit crew don't have to do anything flashy. They don't have to be like Red Bull Racing. And as they make their way out, it is the case that Fletcher leaves the pits well in command of this race still, as we see that Everett meanwhile now comes into the pits for his scheduled stop. The P2 man, I think he's going to be safe in P2 come the end of this one, and we'll keep our eyes on the battle for P3, Sigurd versus Martin, and in terms of how rapidly that gap comes down with 12 minutes to go. Given the lap times here are just shy of 2 minutes, the fact that we do have now 12 minutes to go would suggest we've got approximately 6 laps left, so Martin would need to close down the best part of approximately 1.25 seconds a lap in order to be able to be on the back of Seeger over the course of the final lap. We will wait and see whether that's going to happen. Personally, I think it's going to be very close if he's able to do it, but he's got to be consistent here, Martin is. The one thing Martin is very strong at is consistency. Can he do it will be the question. And I can tell you, in terms of the pits right now, Fletcher there having an absolutely perfect pit stop and just getting things nailed and really just running away with this one. The gap now 37 seconds between himself and Everett, as Everett makes his way out of turn number 2 and continues to make his way up towards turn number 3 here, and doing a very good job as he makes his way out of the third corner. And it is one of those situations right now where I think for Everett, he just needs to bring this home in P2. To give you an update on the previous laps for Seeger and Martin meanwhile, and we're looking at Martin right now, the previous lap was a 48.84 for Martin. Seeger was a 49.92, so it is a second coming down the laps, and Martin doing everything he can, but he needs just a little bit more per lap in order to get this done. It's going to be so close, and you can tell Martin literally pushing every corner right now in order to try and find a way of catching up to the German ahead of him, but I just don't think he's got enough laps. He'd need one more lap, and I don't think he's got it, but we will wait and see. It's going to be so close between these two as he makes his way through turn number 5 and comes up towards 6 and 7. But looking further back, we can see that Doherty, by comparison, right now in P8, doing a very good job of just bringing the car around. He's going to be in the last of the lead lap positions, effectively, although he has been lapped by our race leaders, it should be pointed out. But we've got Emmons, who is chasing after him, a lap down, of course, having recently pitted. And in the hunt for P5, I should tell you right now that Stock has got the gap down to 4.8 seconds as he comes out of Montreal corner here. And we can see that Stock versus Bland, in terms of the lap deltas, there is approximately a gain per lap by Stock of 6 tenths of a second to 8 tenths of a second. On that last lap, it was a 50.57 from Stock. Meanwhile, it was a 51.30 for Bland. And oh, goodness me, as I say that, oh my good lord, and Stock getting it very wrong on the grass going into Agostini. And I think that is going to be the end of the hunt there, as we see a driver actually off a little bit further out. And I think Bland there with a synchronised off. It's almost as if both drivers said, hey, you know what, let's both have a mistake for a little bit of dramatic effect. But both drivers getting it wrong there coming to the end. And Addy now in the hunt versus Stock. Well, I think Stock will be able to reset the gap to an extent, but the gap is now 9.5 seconds between Stock and Bland. So I think that is over that pursuit. And now Addy will feel as though he can potentially go hunting after Stock if he gets a little bit closer here. But he is having that difficulty getting the car through the apexes, particularly Williams' corner there. And I think Stock is just enough to stay safe if he doesn't make any more mistakes. But that was a shocker to the senses of both Bland and Stock, and Bland being able to get away with it lightly there. Stock made a mistake at the same time, and both drivers now pressing on. It could have been worse. It could have been fatal for the pair of them in terms of their racing aspirations for tonight's race. But with just under 9 minutes to go now, it is a case of which one of them will bring it home in P5. And I think Bland will be able to do it if he keeps it together. But Martin, meanwhile, on this lap, you can see, oh, and Martin's made a mistake as well, just pushing a little bit too hard, coming out of what was there, coming out of Oogie's corner, and that, I think, is the pursuit of P3 over for Martin. He's pushed it as much as he possibly can. He gets the car turned around, but that is it. And I think Seagate now will just want to back the car off and take it easy. He doesn't need to do anything crazy anymore, does Seagate. He can just hold it together, and indeed the gap opened up so much right now as Fletcher just continuing to bring this one home. And Everett in P2 right now. Again, no pressure on him. Our top three are all but confirmed right now, so long as there's no major mistakes. But Martin will be absolutely kicking himself. So that goes to show you how hard he was pushing, because we rarely see a major error from Martin. But that was where he was just pushing so hard for Oogie's corner to try and hunt down Seager, and he just pushed a little bit too hard. You got to feel for him, but that's the way the cards rumble sometimes. And I think it's going to be the case now. He's going to have to settle for that P4 unless Seager makes a major error of his own. As I am hearing that Emmons has pulled into the pits, he's retired. It just has not worked out for Emmons tonight, so we are now down to 8 drivers. Emmons retiring there on what was a lap number 24, and now it's a case that Fletcher really bringing us home with 7 minutes to go. Will anybody else succumb to the tight and twisty nature of Snetterton and make a last minute mistake? That will be the big question hanging over the heads of all of our drivers right now as they continue to make their way around. The closest potential battle out on the circuit is potentially looking to be between Stock and Bland. Both drivers have succumbed to mistakes around here. We'll wait and find out if either of them do. They haven't got much time left. Only approximately 3 to 4 more laps of the pair of these drivers as they make their way around. They continue to press around, and we will wait to see what happens between the two of them as they see that Stock making his way right now onto another lap, going onto lap 29. He's done well so far, has Stock. He's just got to keep it together, setting his personal best of the race there at 49.514. By comparison with Bland's, they're taking almost 2 seconds off of Bland. Bland setting a 51.84, so that was in the end, yeah, it was 2.3 seconds he ripped off. So that is absolutely phenomenal. If he can keep doing that, if he can keep nailing those laps there, then Stock come the end of this race will be there. But he's now got to take 2 seconds off of Bland a lap, and that is a huge ask. But we can see Bland further up the road there, and Stock will definitely know he's up ahead, but he'll need to focus on putting in lap after lap and nailing these laps as best as he possibly can as he makes his way through Agostini one more time and continues to push around the circuit. As he makes his way then through Hamilton Corner here, we can see that the gap not really closing up this time as they make their way through. And I think it might be the case that Bland had a small mistake on that lap, because that gap is not coming down as crushingly as perhaps one would hope. But we can see that right now Bland doing everything he needs to hold on to P5, and he's only got the best part of a couple more laps to go. 5.5 minutes to go for Bland. Can he hold on? Can he hold on to that top 5 finish, or will it be Stock who's going to take it away from him come the end of it? We will wait and see, of course, as he makes his way through turn number 9 and coming up into turn number 10. He goes into bomb hole corner and no major changes. Absolutely nailing the corner as per usual. But we can see it's in sector 3 where the gap really does come down, and it is there that Stock is looking to try and get all the time he can on Bland. Martin, however, after that mistake there at Oogie's corner, now just simply driving the car home here. He's not taking a huge amount of time out of Seagert in terms of he's not trying to overhaul the time anymore. He's just backing it off, I think, and recognising the fact there is no need to really overdo it anymore. He might put in a 1 or 2 more laps here because he does still have 47 seconds over Bland in P5, but he doesn't need to do anything silly. He can just focus on running himself at, say, 95% now, and if Seagert makes a mistake, then up it, but otherwise I think it's all but confirmed. But Stock, meanwhile, really pushing on. That previous lap, the P6 driver was a 149.81. By comparison, Bland over 51.47. So that time it was the case that it was approximately what was 1.6 seconds gained by Stock. He is doing enough to be there on the final lap. Will he be able to do it? He's got to keep it together, of course, and that Ferrari, the tyres are going to be pretty shod right now, but he's getting closer as he gets it a little bit wrong at Agostini, and you can see he's just overdriving the car a little bit. He's trying to do everything he can to catch up to Bland. He literally can sniff the exhaust fumes of a Bland in the distance, but he's got to get closer. He's got to keep it together, because otherwise one small mistake and he's got it all to do it, and it'll be over. It'll be too late, and he's taking his chances away with every little slight error he makes right now. As he pushes on, he continues to try and make up the time. He's got 3.7 seconds to go, and Bland, meanwhile, will be doing everything he can just to nail each corner, not to make a fatal mistake. Just keep the car together. As you can see, Bland is pushing it to a limit here. That Ferrari is on its knees right now, and he's trying to escort it home. He's just trying to keep it safe as he makes his way there for into Coram. Once again, going into the extended right-hander for the 30th time of asking. He's probably absolutely loathing the corner right now, knowing how difficult it is, and you can see the rear end of the car sliding through the corner as Stock coming up behind him now, and the gap has not come down as much this time. In fact, Stock and Bland, I think, with much more even laps as they come across the timing line. And Bland there with 51.641, and we can see that Stock there with a 50.751, so only 9/10 of a second chipped off this time. I think Stock has hit the cliff here in terms of being able to close it down with 2.5 minutes to go. I don't think he's going to be able to do it unless he can pull off some miracle laps now by comparison with what he's been doing previously, as he makes his way out of Montreal and up towards Palmer once again, going into the left-hander. But meanwhile, really, it's time to sum up our races for our drivers here. And it's been the case that for Fletcher, having started at the back of the pack, very quickly made his way up through the field with all the drama ahead of him, just making sure to stay safe and clear through the field. And then taking over the lead, he's recovered all the way to lead. And since then, he's never let it go. It has been a phenomenal race by the British driver here. Meanwhile, Everett, you can't say too much has gone wrong for him either. He hasn't had the pace to take it to Fletcher, but he's driven a very solid race in the Ferrari there. And you can see as he makes his way through Agostini, a consistent driver and one he'll be very pleased with indeed. And Seeger, so far, doing everything he needs to bring home the podium there for the German BMW M4, the Jägermeister inspired livery on the car, of course, as he makes his way through Palmer corner right now. And our top three doing a very good job. As you can see, Seeger there flashing his lights for the back marker ahead of him, and I think that might be Doherty ahead of him, who he's asking to move out the way, as I'm hearing that Stock has had a brief off, and that's just coming out of what was their turn number 9. And I think that is going to seal the deal in terms of his off there. We'll take a look. Going through turn 9, just one wheel on the grass. The rear left-hand wheel just sending the car as he's tried to get back on the power. The car has snaked off the circuit once again. So I think that is it for stock chasing Bland down now, unless Bland makes a huge error. But as they all go on to one final lap really now, it is going to be the case that I think Fletcher will have one more lap after this if he nails it absolutely tight. But we will wait and see, of course. He's done such a fantastic job in terms of leading this race from, well, not quite from the start, but once he got the hold of it, as I said previously, he's just run away with it. Martin, meanwhile, in P4, carrying down our order. We can see Martin really had to push the car, got held up a lot due to all the incidents that kicked off ahead of him, having started in P9 and wasn't able to find a way through quickly by comparison with Fletcher and had to stay behind, but finally got through, and it cost him the time he needed to chase down Seeger, and that one mistake as well cost him the ability to go after P3. As he makes his way round through Coram right now, and Bland in P5, if he keeps this together, it'll be a phenomenal result given the fact that he's been battling back and forth throughout the race with Stock, Addy and Doherty. But coming back to our race leader, it's only a couple more corners to go. He makes his way through a bomb hole corner, and now he's got Coram and Murray to wait as he comes through the extended right-hander. He's driven it smoothly. He's had no offs, or if they have, we haven't seen them, and as he comes through the left-hander here onto the final straight, it's going to be the win in the feature race for Billy Fletcher. As he comes across the line here, he'll be jubilant, the team will be jubilant. Well done to him. He takes home the win in the feature race of tonight's test event at Snetterton. And in P2, a very good effort in the end. It will be from Everett as he makes his way down. But before then, we're going to take a look further down our order, because the next driver to come across the timing line to complete their race will be George Bland. As he makes his way then out of the final corner, he will come home in a top 5 position. He will come home in 5th place. The British driver doing everything right in the end and coming home in a well-deserved P5, and it will be Stock coming home in P6, ruin what could have been a battle for P5 at the end of it. But coming back to our 2nd place man, Everett, coming out the final corner, driving a very consistent race, doing barely anything wrong, and as Everett crosses the line, he'll be very pleased with this result and know perhaps that the Ferrari is the car for him as he crosses the line. And we can see that behind him, Addy coming home in that P7 position, not to be his day today in the feature race. And then Seegert, with the P3 driver here, having had that looming threat all the way through the race of Colin Martin getting closer and closer. He now comes through the final corner in the BMW M4, having driven a very strong race all the way through. Consistency has been his name, and the German will cross the line in P3. A fantastic result there, as we see behind him, Doherty coming across the line in P8. A difficult day at the races for him, and Colin Martin kicking himself from one small mistake, which turned into a fatal error for his hunt for P3. He comes home in P4 in the end. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the completion of tonight's feature race. What a fantastic pair of races, but well done to our podium finishers, and none more so than Fletcher for really just running the car from start to finish in a consistent form, making it 2 out of 2 tonight. And Everett as well, behind him there, tucking it in nice and close behind him. And I think Everett will be pleased and will be thinking to himself, what have I got to do to take the fight to Fletcher in the main season? Well, they will have one more test event, of course. Perhaps it's the car choice, perhaps it was just the right car and combination for Fletcher today, but I reckon Fletcher has got a lot of underlying pace there, and he's demonstrated it or made it clear to everybody else down the paddock that he is the man with the pace and the plan. As they come through the final corner then to complete the cool down lap here, and we can see just picking up a little bit of rubber as well. We've got Martin and Seegert there both making their way around here, and Martin having got himself up into a position ahead of Seegert, albeit on the cool down lap, just trying to get a little bit of that psychological advantage over Seegert there, trying to say to Seegert, it could have been like this today, mate, if only I hadn't made that mistake. And Seegert will be saying, yep, but first you didn't need to make that mistake. Brilliant though between the two of them, the two BMW drivers, inseparable over the course of the race in terms of the pace and the potential battle, and in the end it was all about the pressure and consistency. One succumbed, one did not, and it was Seegert was the one who prevailed as a result of it, as they make their way then out of the final sector and they will come into the pits, and that will complete our order for this feature race, as we see there Seagate decides to do a little bit of rallycross and actually having a bit of an unsafe return to the pits there, but catching the car there and perhaps just trying to get the blood flowing a little bit. Perhaps he was getting a bit cold in the cockpit and perhaps the veins were getting a little bit chilled and numb, but we see Colin Martin spinning out of the final corner as well. Both drivers absolutely exhausted and in fact doing a little bit of a Tom and Jerry chase here. I think both of them just a little bit entangled with one another and happy to have enjoyed a very good race and looking forward to next week. Oh, but you can see they're having a little bit of fun there, although I think the mechanics won't be pleased the fact that they've kissed noses there or kissed bumpers, and that will be the end of the feature race tonight. Well, thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, then why not check out our official website, that is nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, the official Facebook group, that's Facebook groups Next Gen Racing. And also a big thank you and a big shout out to our main partners for this series, Apex Racing Academy, which you can check out at apexracingac.com, and Next Level Racing. They're at nextlevelracing.com. Thank you to them for supporting us. Without their support, this wouldn't happen. And of course, without you guys and girls, the viewers, we would not be able to put on such a fantastic show. We really appreciate you tuning in. And remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and come back in a week's time for the final test event going into the official GT3 season 2 of iRacing, as hosted by Next Gen, and that race will be at the tricky mountainous circuit of Bathurst. But until then, remember as always to stay on track. Good night.